Welcome to the June 1st meeting of the Portland City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Fish.
Here.
Salzman, Novick, Fritz.
Here.
Hales.
Here. Good morning, everyone. We have a quorum, but barely, so there's some items on the council calendar that we won't be able to do today because two of our members are not here. Those include emergency ordinances. So there's some things that are going to have to be passed on to future council calendars because we don't have the required 4 votes to do some of those things. And in fact, the consent calendar will be going through it one by one and pulling items that we can still act on to the regular calendar. So bear with us while we work through that somewhat anomalous situation.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure, please.
Because we have to move consent items in order to vote on them, and at the risk of keeping everyone else waiting, we just agree that the consent items will go at the end.
I think that'd be
If they're not
fine.
being pulled by anyone, which would be the normal protocol.
Correct.
We're moving them because we don't have a position.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Unless there's any objection, we'll do that. Okay, but first, before we get to the calendar at all, we have a proclamation, right? No, that one's on the calendar. So we'll take communications items first, starting with item 567.
567, request of David Keefe Davis to address council regarding war on cop watchers by the city.
Hey, Mr. Davis, come on up.
So I want to talk about the targeting of cop watchers and police accountability activists by the city of Portland, including the recent trial of Robert West of Film the Police 911, where you guys of the city found that he was guilty, and he was the only one that was guilty. And the reason he was found guilty is because you have lying prosecutors that go up there and just say whatever the hell they want. They perjure themselves, they take an oath, and then they perjure themselves just like cops do every day in this city, and they're rewarded with overtime, okay? And why are you leaving, Mr. Mayor? You're the police commissioner. Why don't you sit here and listen to some police-related issues instead of running off like a little coward, scurrying little cockroach rat person, you know? I mean, really. And then you have Kathleen Sadat of COAB, and she has a real problem with people filming. And also this other lady over here who's going to be elected to a position of the Portland Development Commission. Well, you want to know what? The Portland Development Commission wars on the homeless. They evict homeless and mentally ill people. So that's a conflict of interest, her being involved in COAB and then being part of a group that bullies and evicts the mentally ill and the homeless. Sorry, that's a real issue, okay? And then where's my video surveillance tape of my arrest on November 25th? You know, you guys falsely charged me with a crime, and Mike Cohen said that I pushed him. Well, where's the video of me pushing him? There's plenty of video in this place, right? And you guys still won't release the surveillance footage? Yeah, have you heard about my recent tort claim for that false arrest and false imprisonment and all that other stuff? And now here I am 6 months later waiting for you jack-offs to pull out the surveillance footage and provide it to my lawyer. Sorry. What's going on in this city? You guys just run like a rogue little fascist dictatorship, and you think that, oh yeah, you want to know what? Oh, Robert West from Film the Police 911. Yeah, he's the leader of Don't Shoot Portland. Yeah, right. A fat white guy is leading Don't Shoot Portland. That's what your little prosecutor said. Is that guy going to get perjury? Is he going to be the same prosecutor that goes and lies on the stand against me? Probably. Or one of your other city-paid, state-sanctioned liars. What is this? You think that lying against citizens and warring on activists is a good thing? You think that's appropriate behavior?
Mr. Davis, you're out of time. You're out of time, Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, you're out of time. Thank you. Let's take the next item. 568, please.
568, request of Neil Walker to address council regarding how support from Portland Police and the Service Agency has impacted his behavioral health growth, and he cannot make it today.
Okay, then let's move on to 569.
569, request of Crystal Olinsky to address council regarding recognition of community activists and volunteers.
Ms. Alinsky, you here? All right, let's move on to 570, please.
Request of Fletcher Nash to address council regarding support for HIP class.
Come on up, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, and I'd just like to say thank you for your time. I think it's an honor and a privilege to be able to sit before you guys.
For coming.
I come before you just hopefully for you guys to support the Humanities and Perspectives class. It's a really great class. I'm kind of nervous.
No, it's okay. Take your time, be easy.
I was supposed to have some classmates with me, but unfortunately, they couldn't make it. It's a free class that is put on by the Humanities and Perspective organization, and it's for low income, and I would like to say the working poor, because all of us in that class is not, low income. We just, but we are low income. I would just like to read one of the letters that our class had wrote. Dear Portland City Council, we, the graduating class of the Humanity and Perspective of 2015-2016, have learned and grown and opened and enlightened. For the last year, we've been meeting twice a week with 5 college instructors as part of the Humanity and Perspective program. HIP is a class made up of a very diverse group of learners, people of different ages, races, backgrounds, and sexual orientations. We all live under 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. None of us have graduated from college yet. And we want to pursue a higher education to help ourselves, our families, our community to succeed. And as we reach the end, we want you to know that this class is the first step towards giving back to the community. Education is the most valuable thing that a person can have. Education is one of the surest ways out of poverty. This is even stronger when you're taught how to be a better person in your community, no matter your age, race, or religion. It gives a person confidence and ability to problem solve life's problems without violence or anger. We did not agree on everything, but at the end of the class, we were all still friends. By studying the literature, visual culture, philosophy, and history together, we can get a greater sense of interrelatedness of knowledge and arts, as well as our community, as the community we live in. Our classmate Tim puts it this way: I've learned more in-depth understanding on so many fascinating topics. Another classmate put it, HIP has broadened my somewhat narrow worldviews through discussing such things as justice in a very diverse setting. I feel that I have come. Oh, yes.
People that want to know more about the HIP program and the class, can you tell us who's the organizational support? What's the school or church organization that sponsors?
How do people reach you as well? Yeah.
Oh, it's Humanities and Perspectives class,
Where is that class?
if I could have Kyle, here we go, Kyle, come here.
So tell us how people can get in touch with this program, because obviously it's doing some good.
Yeah, so the program's run through Oregon Humanities. It's a nonprofit. It's Oregon's State Humanities Council.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So go to the Oregon State Humanities Council
Or
website.
Oregon Humanities website. Yes.
Website. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Hey, thank you very much. We appreciate
You're
you
so
being
much.
here and shining a light on this good work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And if I can, I made.
Please, yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate what you're doing. Yeah, I saw her. So Ms. Alinsky's here, so we'll go back to item 569, which has already been read, so come on up. Yes, Please.
So much, I really appreciate it. I wanted to make copies of this from the Vanport Mosaic, but I don't have the money to make copies anymore like I used to, and Sam Adams vetoed it. He said, you can't hand out things to the public. So anyway, hi, I'm honored to be here. My name is Crystal Elinsky. I'm very privileged. And I've been making this 4-hour commute since 2008. I had an interesting weekend. It started in the search to find the 150 women who'd been swept up in Gresham and dropped off in downtown Portland. I never found them, but a friend said that he saw a load of suitcases and bags at TPI. Do you know what happened? Meanwhile, OPB was talking to City Hall about their plans to resettle the same number of women and families from the extended temporary Sears shelter in Lake Oswego. Will the Greshamites get the same attention, the Greshamites?
Actually, the Sears shelter's in Portland.
Greshamites,
Oh, well, we
the women from Gresham, will they get the same attention?
try. I hadn't heard about it before. Thank you.
Speaking of the Housing Bureau, I applaud the commissioner in charge for deciding to tax the new constructions. Read banks, developers, rich people mostly, but maybe he'll give exceptions to the average small homeowner. That would be nice, to go toward subsidized housing. I hope it's not to those same agencies that Mayor Holes gave another emergency at $18 million to the ones I've been testifying about, their increasing failures since the first day I came here. I can see how Commish Saltzman's frustration with the other commissions involving themselves in housing issues without informing the Bureau could result in his action, what may be the best action to date, especially if it leads to rent control, as the Portland Tenants United has been pressing, and fewer galas and lobbying for the Metro Multifamily Housing Association. Then I saw Nick Fish at the Vanport Mosaic. His speech was shorter than any I'd ever seen from him, thank goodness, and his Freudian slip was not lost on me. Overcoming diversity. He meant to say adversity. After all, it was under this administration and the forever funded blood-sucking capitalist wanking PDC, Portland Development Commission, that North Portland saw its worst gentrification in history. I know because that's where I lived. And there were simply too many taxpayer-funded monologues by the likes of Chucky Hales about affordable housing and of the locals, churches full of the elderly and Black residents who, in fact, did not want these demolitions and these shoddy new constructions that cost $3,000 a month. Meanwhile, a group of people who should be honored 100-fold more than Phil Knight, remember I held that book up to you the other day, scraped together enough for us to save us from collective amnesia about Vanport. Did you attend the APAC conference last weekend? Do you know anybody who did? Okay, well, that was another thing I did this weekend. Okay, I went to see Akram and Rameya of the FreePalestineMovement.org. In my perspective of housing, and I'm almost done, I'm sorry, of housing and colonial settlements, heightened and deepened by these two women who are the bravest I've ever met, and we should honor them. We should also honor Hetty Epstein, who just died last week. She was on the Free Gaza flotilla and a survivor of the Holocaust. And we should also honor people like Michelle Munt, who lived in subsidized housing and fought for the rights of the people who should not be swept up.
Crystal,
Shoes,
thank you.
beer, and primate research, Guantanamo Bay torture, those are bad for the environment. If we can house 30,000 people in 110 days after the Depression and during the war, why can't we do it now?
Good question.
Thank you
Crystal,
so
thank you
much.
Thank you.
Anybody,
Okay,
you can get
let's
this
take-
on the website.
All right, thanks a lot.
Vanport
Let's take
Mosaic.
item
Item
571.
571, request of Evelyn Bross to address council regarding housing.
Come on up, please.
Sorry, I'm walking kind of crooked. I fell through a screen.
Oh, take your time. Thank you for coming.
I'm so sore. I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank you.
Might take a minute to sit down, right? Okay. Good morning, Mayor, City
Morning.
Council members. You got the flyer, the thing there? Okay. The thing is, I never had bed bugs until I moved into the housing project. The thing is that they came, if you look at the papers, they came in January, and they came with dogs to check every 110 apartments for bed bugs. They didn't find it in my apartment, but they were getting in my cat water. I didn't know there were bed bugs then. I said, I have bugs in my cat water. They said, well, drain them out and put them in a sandwich bag and give it to them. So I did, and they said, those are bed bugs. Why are they going in my cat water? So finally they had, as you notice, that's after the bed bug testing with the dog. Then there's all these records where this shows February or April 12th, where they were coming to check for bed bugs, and they found one on my couch. And then I says, but they're going in my cat water. I know they're coming from the hallway because it's a secure building. The thing is that they went outside and they pulled the baseboard apart. The bed bugs are living in the baseboards, and they're crawling up the door frame and across and down. They're traveling like ants all the way through the apartment. The problem is that it's not just my floor that has it, and there's 8 apartments affected, and I had to drop out of college in order to deal with this. The thing is that here's 8 apartments here, here's the elevator and laundry room, here's the other apartments over here. Okay, my apartments over here are all, the baseboards are all taken off, but the carpet isn't taken off. We're supposed to all be ready for a spraying. The other side, they're not making them do anything. So the bed bugs are just gonna travel over there, and then they're gonna have to deal with them. They're gonna travel over there because they're not doing the whole floor.
Ross, can I ask you a question?
Yes?
So thank you for giving us this packet. And it appears from what you've given us that you live in housing that is sponsored by Home Forward.
Yes.
Commissioner Saltzman, the housing commissioner, is dealing with a personal matter today. We'll make sure that this material gets to him. We don't run Home Forward, but we do appoint commissioners. And there's nothing worse than having a bed bug or a roach infestation. Because you've given us all the documents, which we really appreciate, we can then go to Home Forward and ask them to respond in writing.
The thing is that they're not doing it correctly. They need somebody from the outside. And the citizens of Portland pay taxes that go toward the housing.
You've identified the issues and the facts, so what I can promise you is we'll bring this up with Home Forward, and we'll get them to give a formal response, and then we'll follow up.
But I called Home Forward and they didn't know nothing about it.
Now you come before us.
And you're,
We'll do our part.
you're still at the apartment in North Syracuse, right? So
Yes.
that's where they can reach you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we'll make sure they do.
Because I don't know what to do. I mean, I can't bring my school books into my house because they'll go into my books. I had to throw all my books out. I found dead bed bugs in my decorating cake pans. I had to throw them out. I threw 7 recycle bins out on top of furniture. I lost a lot of stuff. So I don't have a bed, I don't have a couch, I don't have a chair. All I have is a recliner.
Wow.
And that's what I sleep on.
Okay. Yeah, no, we appreciate you letting us know. Sorry you're having to deal with this, so.
So I'm hoping you can do something because, I mean, I called Home Forward and they says, well, they're trying their best. And they're not trying their best and they only do half the section of the floor
Sure.
and the other half isn't being taken care of.
Results are what matter, so that's,
Right.
and you don't have the right result yet, so thank you for letting us know. Sorry you had to deal with this. We will, as Commissioner Fish said, we'll make sure that we ask Home Forward to respond and get back to you and make it right.
Because it's not right not to do half the floor.
Oh, yeah, no.
And it's not just
unacceptable.
my floor, there's other floors too.
Bad.
They're just patching them up. They're not doing, I don't know if they can give you, if they can give you a Section 8 to move out if you wanted to, because there's one lady who wants them to move her out,
Yeah,
and she refuses to come back in because she got bit by a bed bug.
yeah, I understand. Well, that's one of the options that we'll ask them to explore with you.
Okay.
Thank you. And so thank you for
Thank
making the trip and taking the trouble to come here to let us know about it. And also, as Commissioner Fish said, you've given us good documentation so we can follow up with them and they can follow up with you.
Okay, so do you need my phone number or anything?
I'm sure,
don't- we
no,
don't
don't
want
need
you
your
to put
phone
that on
number.
the
You don't need to
record.
put that on the record. We've got your address here, and Home Forward will get a hold of you there one way or another.
All right.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks for coming down.
Sure.
Okay, now let's move to our first time certain, which is a proclamation, which Commissioner Fritz is prepared to read and which we're going to properly prepare for, so.
Hey, wait a second.
Where's your scarf?
I had 5 to choose from, and I think I was
Quick,
overwhelmed.
There's a scarf emergency.
Okay, somebody in my office, please bring Commissioner Fisher's scarf. Pick any scarf.
If we can read the
There
item,
goes Susan
I'll
Martin.
tee it up, and then Commissioner Fritz is going to read it.
Susan is going to help you out
I don't-
here.
Susan.
Hey, look at that. Wow.
Fast.
Thank you. How embarrassing. Why
Beyond the call of
don't you
duty.
folks come forward?
Come on up, folks, and we'll get to read your item.
572, proclaimed June 6th through 12th, 2016, as Timbers, Thorns, and T2 Stand Together Week in Portland.
Pull up another chair
So-
from over there if you'd like.
Commissioner Fritz is going to read the proclamation, and colleagues, if I can just introduce our special guest.
Please.
From the Timbers and the Thorns family. First is Crystal Whistle, who's the Director of Community Relations. Crystal, raise your hand, say. And she does that for both the Timbers and the Thorns. Carling Leone, Community Relations Manager for the Timbers and the Thorns. Carling? Okay. Jordan Farwell, Community Relations Coordinator. She's not here? So you are,
Donna Malecki,
and what's your title?
Community Relations Intern.
We got an all-star team here today. Come on, who needs Jordan? And of course, we have Timber Joey, and Mayor, pursuant to the rules of the building, we did have him check his heavy equipment out front, so he was not allowed to
Thank you.
bring in his electric saw. It's our pleasure to welcome you to City Hall to celebrate the 2016 Stand Together Week. We're very proud of what you do on the field and off the field, and it's now our honor, and Commissioner Fritz has a special proclamation to read.
So today we are Rose City proud, and I'm going to put my Timbers, my Riveters and Timbers Army scarf on and read the proclamation, which I find proclamations go best with a tinge of British accent, still here after 30 years in Portland. Whereas the City of Portland is proud to be home to the Portland Timbers, Portland Thorns FC, and Timbers 2. And whereas the Timbers, Thorns, and T2 are committed to giving back to our community and promoting civic engagement through their community platform, Stand Together. And whereas the City of Portland is proud to partner with the Timbers, Thorns, and T2 in organizing the 5th anniversary of Stand Together Week, a week of community service from June 6 through June 12, 2016. And whereas over 1,000 Stand Together volunteers, including Timbers, Thorns, and T2 players, the Timbers Army, Rose City Riveters, coaches, ambassadors, front office staff, sponsors, and community members will come together for a week of service. And whereas Stand Together volunteers will participate in over 32 community events and projects throughout Portland. And whereas community service projects will include building homes, tending gardens, restoring local parks, thank you very much, pulling ivy, leading soccer clinics, repairing children's bicycles, and more. And whereas Stand Together will support local mission-driven nonprofits, including Boys and Girls Clubs, Children's Book Bank, Playworks, Latino Network, Community Cycling Center, Zenger Farms, Friends of Trees, and the Oregon Food Bank, among others. And whereas Stand Together Week is a call to action by the city, the Portland Timbers, Portland Thorns FC, Timbers 2, and community partners to inspire people to give back through community service. Now, therefore, Charlie Hales, the mayor of the city of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, does hereby proclaim June 6 to 12 to be Timbers, Thorns, and T2 Stand Together Week in Portland and encourages all residents to observe this week.
So,
Welcome, welcome.
Crystal, get close to the mic if you could. And welcome, and also please let us know if there are any spots still open for people that want to volunteer.
Yes, there are absolutely still spots available for the community to volunteer alongside with our athletes, our players, our coaches, our front office staff. You can just go to ptstandtogether.com and there'll be links for Stand Together Week.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I want to just a quick personal story. My wife and son have spent the year in Spain, and I had a chance to visit them recently, and they were trying to figure out what gifts to give the cousins, who are roughly my son's age, about plus or minus 12. And so we gave them Timbers jerseys,
Oh, nice.
and they wore them all the time. So it's very
Aw,
cool.
Thank you for that.
So, Timber Joey, you want to say a few words?
I'm just excited. I can't believe it's been 5 years that we've been doing this. It's a great opportunity to get out in the community, to actually get to meet some of the players and to give back. And it's a very fulfilling week. We're excited to be a part of it again.
And Timber, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you have a great seat and a great vantage point in the team. Can you here today guarantee championships for both the Timbers and the Thorns? Can we get you on the record, sir?
Yeah. I guarantee that in the future you will see championships from both the Timbers and the Thorns. I think whether it's a star on the jersey or just what we do in the community, we're definitely going to be champions again.
You sure are, and there's a real positive relationship between cities and their sports teams, and we have that too. But this is really above and beyond. And the fact that you, as an organization, and your players are actually out in the community working side by side with people that want to make Portland better is really distinctive. And it's really noticed and appreciated, and that's why we wanted to do this today, because when the more volunteers that work with you, the more good things that get done. But just the fact that the Timbers and the Thorns do this as an organization, it builds the tie even stronger between the teams and the city.
It's our 5th year, and it's absolutely a celebration not only of our players and our fans, but also this beautiful city that we live in. And we hope that we'll get to meet many of you there, and you'll be able to join us in this impactful week.
It's great. It's great. Well, thank you.
One other thing, everybody has a favorite player. Every family roots for someone, and probably in my house, it's Tobin Heath, who we think may be the best female soccer player in the world, at least in our home, who didn't go to UP. We got to have an asterisk. Best women's soccer player didn't go to UP.
And she's an even better person. She's quite great.
But the other thing, we mentioned it the other day when the mayor and Commissioner Fritz had a hearing on refugee and immigrants and the work they're doing, New Portlanders, how proud we all are of Darlington Nagby, who just as of 2015 became a United States citizen, and the other night scored his first goal as a member of the U.S. national men's team. What a proud moment for our community.
And to note, just recently had his first assist with the U.S. men's team too in the last games.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming. We'd love to take a photo with you while you're here, if you'd be willing.
May I just make some comments in addition to the proclamation?
Proclamation, and then we
Just saying, I'm the season ticket holder.
We didn't know that you followed the sport, Amanda. I'm
Hear
sorry.
about soccer? I hadn't noticed.
I have been watching soccer, football since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, as they say in England. And there's no European club that has the community support that we have here in Portland. And indeed, we're getting national and international recognition for Soccer City USA. And the Timbers Army, the Rose City Riveters, and the partnership with the professional organizations is what makes it special and keeps it special. And this volunteering in the community, which is very much supporter-led and with the partnership of the corporation and the players and the teams, is unparalleled. And I really appreciate the fact that that's what we do in Portland. It's another reason why we had 18,000 people there for the Thorns game, a regular season game, just, whatever. And Commissioner Saltzman isn't here today. I was thinking about him on Sunday, but he does not like 0-0 draws. And I thought it was fabulous. I just, the embracing of being without 6 national players and still battling to a wonderful draw against, them people. It was fabulous. So this just continues to emphasize why Portland is special, why Portland is different, and how we do things differently in Portland. So thank you for being part of that, and thank you for taking the time to come here today.
Thank you so much.
Well done. Thanks. Let's take a photo.
We can all appreciate that.
till we get a new log. We were noticing on Saturday, Sunday, a new log is there? All right, good.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have. He's had to cut too many slices out of the old one.
Nice.
All right, that was great. So now I'd like to move on to item 587, because Dr. Moreland Capuya is here and will not be able to be here a long time. So we want to take that item, please, if there's no objection. And would you read the item, please?
587, appoint Dr. Alicia Moreland Capula to the Portland Development Commission Board for a term to expire July 9, 2019.
So I'd like to invite Dr. Moreland Capuya to come up, and council members have had a chance, of course, to know this woman and her service to our city in a number of ways. She's the executive director of the Oregon Health and Science University's Abel Gorley Center for Healing. She's an assistant professor of public psychiatry at OHSU, but we also know her because of a large amount of community service, both through foundation, but also through service on the Oregon Historical Society Board, the Oregon Health Policy Board, Healthcare Workforce Committee, I Have a Dream Oregon, the Governor's Council on Alcohol and Drug Abuse Programs, and on our Community Oversight Advisory Board. So she is a serial volunteer and somehow manages to maintain incredible professional standing, but also serve this community in a lot of ways as a volunteer. So very proud to have you on our agenda today, and that you are willing to take on a really big volunteer job of being one of the 5 members of the Portland Development Commission Board.
Mayor, I move the nomination before the candidate withdraws.
Before she withdraws.
Reconsiders her appointment.
And it is a report. So
By
we can't
unanimous
opt out.
consent.
So I don't know if you want to add anything to my resume that I read of yours, but again, thank you, Alicia, for your willingness to do this. It's a big deal.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you, Mayor Hales, Commissioner Fritz, and Commissioner Fish, and also to Commissioner Saltzman and to Commissioner Novick. What most people don't know is that I actually was an urban studies minor, and I was very short from being a major. And so these things around city issues, I think it's very important as the city continues to develop and grow. It's not just important to consider what we develop, but how we develop. And I think that there's some very rich opportunities to participate in those discussions and being a little bit more mindful of the human impact of development, which I think is very, very important. And then the last thing I would say is I was reflecting on a quote this morning, and the quote was that the person who looks through an open window sees fewer than a person who looks through a closed window. And really what that means is that the person who's looking through an open window has everything right in front of them. And in some regards, that limits one's sense of imagination or possibility. But those who's looking through a closed window, you kind of have to bust through that and kind of open that wide and look a little deeper, look a little wider. And so I think that my participation on the Portland Development Commission is what I'd like to call effectively widening and deepening the bench. In order to participate more effectively in this change process, I think that it does require a fresh, new perspective that kind of busts through the possibilities and imagination. So I'm very pleased with the opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question in addition to the resume that was read?
Sure.
Jefferson High School graduate
Absolutely.
and Rose Festival queen.
Absolutely.
So I think those two are particularly dear to me in seeing that you are homegrown and have doing great things in our community and are giving back to our community. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Yeah, this is Rose Festival season, and we did take our kids up to Washington Park to look at my plaque there that says Queen Alicia. But I won't tell you what year that was in.
You have to go look and find out.
I also want to say that you follow in very big footsteps. The 2 of our most honored citizens that you've had a lot of life experience with and partnership with are obviously former Senator Abel Gordley,
Yes.
who was my state senator, and Kate Turan.
Mhm.
And I had the honor of serving on her board and former Nonprofit of the Year executive. So that is, if you judge someone on the basis of the company they keep, you can't do any better than that.
Agreed. Thank you.
Well, and want to thank your husband, Daniel, for volunteering more time as a dad so you can do more as a community leader.
And thank you for that, because I think that that's the other piece, is that it totally is a partnership. And my husband, Daniel, is super duper amazing. What I tell him, I won't sing here today, but I can tell you that he is sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I got the month of May. That is Daniel, and I really appreciate his partnership, his love, and I definitely couldn't do it without him. So
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate you being here today.
thank you.
Thanks. So is there anyone else who wants to comment on this report before we adopt it? Then
We had 4 people asked to
Okay,
testify.
thank you very much. If you, thank you. Come up, please.
With Joe Walsh, David Keefe Davis, and Crystal Linsky. Please come up.
Come on up.
Is Crystal still here?
Come on up, please.
My name is Joe Walsh, and I represent Individuals for Justice. We oppose this appointment. We think that she's doing too much, that she's overburdened. And there is a point where if you volunteer for too many committees, that you cannot be effective in any of the committees. Your time is just taken up. And we oppose this appointment, and that's the main reason that we oppose it. There are other reasons, but I'm not going to go into those. You know, we're having a terrible time with co-op at the moment, and she's part of that, is my understanding. She plays a role in that also. That wasn't mentioned in the preview, but it's my understanding that she plays a role in that. I may be wrong on that, but our main concern is that she's overburdened. If I had to do what she's doing, I would be probably in a padded room someplace. So what we're suggesting is that not only is the talent should be looked at, but also the time that they spend on these committees. So you have absentees because they're overburdened. You have inattention because they're overburdened. And the more committees you sit on, the less you can do. So that's our objection. She's overburdened, and you should consider that. We fully acknowledge that you're going to okay this appointment. We're not here to talk to you. We're here to talk to the people listening to this. That there is a time, this is the first time in 8 years we have opposed any appointment that you made. First time. But looking at her resume, it's impressive. Too busy. Too busy. Just like you guys sometimes are too busy to pay attention and you get into trouble. Because you let something go. And we take you on. We have nothing else to do. We just take you on. But you're busy. So is she. Nice lady, talented, too busy. Thank you.
I appreciate the point, Joe. I do want to respond, and that was an issue that we discussed both in vetting the possible nominees for this position and her in particular, and her plan is to ramp down and discontinue some of her other volunteer service in order to put the time into this, because you're right, there's a human limitation to how much people can do. So, so she understands that, I understand that, I think the council understands that she will be discontinuing or diminishing some of her other volunteer activities, assuming that this appointment goes forward, because this is a big job, and we want people that are fully involved in it. So, legitimate point. Thank you.
But I'm sure that you're aware that I believe in what people do, not what they say.
Yeah.
So you can say all kinds of good things and do nothing. I like it when people actually do something. So if she was to ramp down and say, okay, you know, I'm taking all of these out in order to do this job or this volunteer position, I would be impressed. But generally, well, I'm going to slow down a little bit. We all say that. I say that every week. Do I do it? No.
Thank you. Okay, would like to be next?
Okay. So, my name is David Keefe Davis, and I think that she is also overburdened, and I also think that she needs to step down from COAB as one of her positions because she does a horrible job at that. She led a group bullying session after I was called a white supremacist, and I'm actually a Jew, okay? Bud Fulis of COAB called me a white supremacist skinhead who targets black people. And you know, she talked about the human impact of development. You know, yeah, I definitely understand the human impact of development and gentrification and all that other stuff that she's going to be a big part of. I understand that the Portland Development Commission felt that it was a good choice to go under the Hawthorne Bridge and fence it off and lease that land from ODOT in order to punish mentally ill people and homeless people that had been sleeping there. So that's a great job. And then, you know, I was labeled a white supremacist by one of her fellow COAB members, Bud Fulis, who is a transgender person, and he actually serves on the board of directors at the National Organization of Women. You know, which, I don't know. I don't see a 60-year-old guy who's transitioning into being a woman to actually have the same experiences as a woman, okay? So I don't think he should be the chair of that. I think, you know, you got Bud Fulis and all these people slandering me, calling me a white supremacist when I'm a Jew, right? Okay? And then what did she do afterwards? She didn't. She talked to all the COAB people after I was kicked out because I made a big stink about that, right? Okay? Yeah, well, any Jew would probably make a big stink about that. But what she did was she said, well, this is unacceptable that Mr. Davis didn't like being slandered and called a white supremacist, and we're professionals and we demand respect. So, you know, this is unacceptable what Mr. Davis did. And, you know, and then, oh, wow, she works with Abel Gordley. Yeah, another great one who pointed out to Kathleen Sadat, oh, he's filming, you know, when I was sitting in a chair filming a COAB meeting, and then I was escorted by the police. So these people don't understand mental illness. She's an authoritarian dictator. I'm sure she bullies patients left and right. Or, you know, I mean, this lady needs to go find a job doing something that doesn't include other humans.
Thank you. You're out of time.
She is a...
Mr. Davis, you're out of time.
She's
Thank
about
you.
as bad of a choice as you guys could ever ask for.
Okay, thanks. Mrs. Linsky, I think you're next.
Hi, my name is Crystal Elinsky, and I represent 10,000. I will try to be short since I used a little extra time in my communications. I did mention the PDC in my communications, so I won't go there again. But I'll list some names. Carol Smith, Dan Staten, Larry O'Day, last time I testified, Bernie Justo, Mike Reese. Vicky Phillips, Neil McFarlane, these people who get appointed, a lot of them need to resign, possibly indicted, especially when it comes to poisoning our children. I understand Kathleen Sadat just retired as well, resigned. It reminds me of when Hillary Clinton resigned because she was just too busy to do Secretary of State. She was sick and had to deal with her family, but now she's running for president, so go figure. And then same with former Attorney General Kroger, who couldn't handle it and then somehow went to Reed College. So I, you know, as the president, I don't really get it. But Kathleen Sadat, I've always honored her, and I approached her the other day. We were at a meeting together, and I said, I heard this OPB interview
So I want
where...
you to focus on this appointment.
Exactly.
Kathleen
This is
Sadat.
very related because as this is the same COAB group. And she told me, so she was on an OPB interview, and I said that I was disappointed in the way she explained. She expected every single person to be involved, that we needed more involvement, and the way she did it, because I feel the same. But I understand, and that's why I represent 10,000, that people can't be here. And yet we have the same volunteers and the same appointments and the same so-called experts. I would like to submit my application for Kathleen Sadat's position. She encouraged me to go to the COAB, the most recent COAB meeting. I said I went to the first two. I was very disappointed. Judge Simon was great. I followed it tooth and nail along with the police. And then when I went to the COAB meeting, I was just floored. I don't really want to go, but she encouraged me, and I went, and we were, the public in general, we were put down. It was incredibly demeaning, degrading, and dismissive, the way that they talked about it. And that was my impression, and I don't understand how people like this continue to get the same appointments and move on to other commissions. And when Commissioner Fritz says, you know, I'm so proud of all of our volunteers in Portland, we need to find ways to get more people involved because we're starting to have this revolving door incestuous thing going on. So I would like to apply, so let me know how to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
My name is Sarah Long, and so I've come before you guys before and told you that your main problem is that you don't have time. That is, again, something I see here. You didn't seem to understand why Ms. Alinsky was making the points she was. They are very valid and important points. The reason these appointments are deeply problematic. Obviously, Dr. Moreland Capulet is an excellent doctor, and I have here she serves as executive director of the Abel Gordley Center of Healing at Oregon Health and Science University. She's an assistant professor of public psychiatry at OSHU, co-founder of the Capulet Foundation, a nonprofit established to improve access to healthcare, education, and agriculture in the African nation of Angola.
OHSU tortures
let
primates
her finish,
and
Crystal.
Guantanamo
Let her
Bay
proceed.
prisoners.
That is true, but anyway, the fact that you have chosen someone who is so completely overstressed it is, I respect what you're trying to do. You're trying to take someone who is a native Portlander, who is a Black woman, and get her into this position on this board, and that's wonderful. But the fact that she is already so completely overstretched is indicative of just how sick and wan and on the verge of death our volunteerism system is. Okay, you guys need to be reaching out to other people. I strongly support Ms. Alinsky's application to take Kathleen Sadat's position. I think she'd be much, much better in the position. And you guys really, really need to find the time, okay, to listen to the people, not the echo chamber, not the establishment, the people.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much. Anyone else?
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog Communications, PDX. What we have a problem here is that at this point, I'm actually in agreement with Mr. Walsh, Mr. Davis, and the other speakers, and I'll state my reason. I attended these meetings at COAB where Mr. Davis was trying to film from different areas of the room, which I felt was completely appropriate for him to do that. He was told he could not by Ms. Sadat numerous times, leave, you're disruptive, we're gonna have you arrested. Even well-known attorneys there, Mr. Steen and Mr. Rosenbaum, professor, all agreed with Mr. Davis. She made it a point to have him removed and arrested. That is a violation of his First Amendment rights, the United States Constitution. She was unconstitutional, what she did. That will be proven in court. When people in COAB agree with what she did and close these meetings down to the public, again, you're all unconstitutional. You don't believe in the First Amendment right of the public to speak. You need to continue these meetings, deal reasonably with somebody like Mr. Davis, who has every right to be in there filming, and understand next week you decided to cancel the meeting, which the mayor and Mr. O'Day were scheduled to appear per the settlement agreement. You canceled that. Had your own executive session, knowing that in an executive session you can not have the public included. You know, that's very interesting. You want to make those moves because we watch this very close. Well, that's fine. You can do that. You talk about being inclusive or exclusive. Well, I'm telling you, you exclude the public, you include your ideas, what you want to say, and that's all that matters to you. So as of this time, what I've seen happen at COAB, very disappointed how that's being run. And as of this time, appointing you to PDC, guess what, City of Portland? Patrick Quinton made the biggest mistake on the United States Post Office building because he tarnished that by mistreating Jordan Snitzer on Centennial Mills property. Mistreated him. And if those are the kind of people you want to sit in these meetings, that's fine. You can have them all day long. But guess what? The public's standing up. The public doesn't like the way they're being treated. And don't forget, you represent the public. That is why you're there. COAB is to speak to the public, listen to their ideas, listen to Mr. Davis, listen to Mr. Walsh, listen to everybody in that room. The public has something to say. That's what these meetings are about. If you don't like those type of meetings, you don't like them saying maybe something you think is inappropriate, tough. Don't put yourself into those meetings. Put people in those meetings understand that when the public is there, they want to speak. They want to get their ideas out there. If you don't like it, don't volunteer for these jobs. Just get out. Don't be on these boards.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Okay, anyone else?
Can I move the report?
Okay, let's take action on the report then, please.
Fish.
Well, Dr. Moreland Kapula, thank you for stepping up and agreeing to serve. And I'll tell you, I've been on this council for probably
Folks.
7.5, 8 years. We've had plenty of hearings on nominees for the Portland Development Commission. We've had developers and lawyers and people from all kinds of walks of life. This is the first time that I've heard a hearing focus on whether someone is too busy to do the job. And I would be remiss if I didn't say under the circumstances that while people have a right to say whatever they want when they come before us, it struck me as patronizing to tell someone of your credentials that you are incapable of budgeting your time and making the commitment. And frankly, I was embarrassed by the testimony.
I'm embarrassed by
So,
you, asshole.
Hey, okay, you're excluded if you say another word.
So calling Jews a white supremacist.
And so are you, Mr. Davis.
Fish and
We're recessed. We're recessed. You're in the process of voting on Dr. Marlon Capuya's appointment, and Commissioner Fish was speaking.
A lot of drama, but let's get back to the issue that's before us. The other thing I want to say to the good doctor who has put her name forward for this important position is that the Portland Development Commission is at a crossroads. We are in the process of doing a national search for a new director. Starting in January of next year, we'll have a new mayor who's in charge of the Bureau. And we are having a community conversation about the mission and direction of the agency for many years to come, which means you are coming into leadership at a critical moment in the history of the Portland Development Commission. And what excites me is all of the wisdom and judgment and life experience that you're bringing to this position to help us get it right now and into the future. So thank you for stepping up to serve, and today I'm honored to support your nomination. Aye.
So I'm very glad that Commissioner Fish spoke before I did, and also that he used the word patronizing. I have never, in any appointment in the 7+ years that I've been here, heard a man question as to whether or not he is overburdened and doing too much. And I appreciate Dr. Marlon Capuya noting that it's because of the partnership with Daniel and that you are able to not only do everything else that we've heard about.
Hey, please, any more interruptions and you'll have to be excluded
Who we're going
too.
to interrupt.
Crystal, I will exclude you if you interrupt again.
And I would encourage everybody to check your own biases, because that was actually one of my first thoughts. And then I thought, Dr. Marlon Capuya makes very good decisions, and so she can make her own decision on this, and she can decide what's too much and what's not too much. Then I wondered about her other experience for the Portland Development Commission, and I looked at the Capuya Foundation website. For education, this is about helping folks in Angola, and it's only been going since 2015. The Capuya Foundation will continue to build on our pre-existing relationship with Portland Community College, which hosts 3 to 4 students from Angola per year. Students come to Portland, Oregon on an academic visa, earn a degree and advanced training in health science, technology, and business, then return to Angola to employ their education. The Capuya Foundation plans to increase the number of Angolan students that participate in academic exchange in Portland Community College. So that's all well and good. What experience does she have in development? The Capuya Foundation built an urgent care clinic named Fundadesk, I'm not even going to try that, in Cacau, Angola. The clinic is up and running. It will serve 10,000 local Angolans. It will house 2 physicians, 5 nurses, 5 physician nursing assistants. Basic health maintenance service and low-level surgical procedures will be performed. So she's already had development experience as well. I could go on and on about the qualifications, and I won't because of the time. I'm very honored that you're going to serve, and I would reflect that this is one of the highest volunteer jobs in Portland. It's one of the most responsibilities. It has a lot of authority to spend millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. And who better than somebody who's done so much volunteering to have worked her way up in the volunteer world to serve on this important commission. Thank you so much, Mayor, for nominating her and for putting your trust in her and her abilities. Aye.
Yes.
Thank you, and she certainly has my trust in her abilities and Portland's. First, I want to thank Camille Trummer and Julian Detweiler on my staff who vetted nominees for this position, and actually we are an embarrassment of riches as a city in terms of capable volunteers in our community who are willing to take on roles like this. So she was in a tough competition, but she prevailed because of her dedication to the city and because of what she brings to this post. The rest of her qualifications have been well discussed, but let me just return for a moment to OHSU. One of the reasons why I think having Dr. Marlon Capuya on the board of the PDC for the next few years is going to be critical is that there was a time when medical research and that industry was not much of a factor in Portland's economy. But now, thanks to the Knight Challenge and the amazing plans that are underway in the South Waterfront and on the Hill, OHSU and other medical research, the cancer work going on at Providence, the broad spectrum of cutting-edge research at OHSU, I think that's going to be an important part of Portland's economy in the future. And in fact, I'm not the only one that thinks that, because one of the things that we did in our strategic plan for PDC was say, you know, the medical world is going to be a bigger part of Portland's economy in the future. So your expertise as a physician and as part of that organization is going to be well placed. And this is a small board, so having people with multiple qualifications and multiple facets to their experience is really important. So I think that's going to be important as well. And then I also want to mention, some of what government does is take the community's hopes and dreams and put them in seemingly boring documents like budgets or a comprehensive plan or a strategic plan for PDC. And that strategic plan made a pivotal change. It used to be that PDC's job was to build the city and create jobs. Now PDC's job is to build the city, create jobs, and share prosperity across a much more diverse community. And her passionate commitment to that goal is another reason why Alicia will be a wonderful addition to this board. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Portland will be well served by your volunteerism, and thank you for doing this. Very happy to vote aye. Thank you so much. All right. Yeah, we've got to do this time certain, and we have Mayor Clark in the hall.
What?
So I'm not going to keep that man waiting much longer. So let's move, please, to the next time certain.
Item 573, proclaim June 1 through June 12 to be the 30th Annual Great Blue Heron Week in Portland.
Well, we have a team of people that care about Portland's environment coming forward. Very pleased to have you here, especially Mayor Bud Clark. It's always a pleasure to welcome you back.
It gets more ladies every year.
So I'll read this proclamation and then turn it over to this distinguished panel. It says, whereas 30 years ago, the city of Portland established the great blue heron as its official bird and a symbol of commitment to protecting and restoring its urban watersheds for the health of people and wildlife. And whereas over the past 3 decades, the city achieved significant accomplishments towards this objective, including addressing the discharge of raw pollution into our waterways, establishing itself as a national leader in green infrastructure, and creating a world-class system of parks, trails, and natural areas. And whereas over the past year, the city has achieved significant milestones towards this objective, including passing a ban on new fossil fuel infrastructure along our river, developing a comprehensive plan that prioritizes reclaiming brownfields and intensifying use of existing industrial lands in order to meet industrial land needs, and establishing that the city's largest remaining unprotected natural area, West Hayden Island, is not needed to meet industrial land demand. And whereas our city still has significant challenges and opportunities ahead in order to continue to meet this objective, including ensuring that a plan is adopted to clean up and mitigate for the Portland Harbor Superfund site that will provide for the health of people and wildlife using the Willamette River, developing a second generation of cutting-edge green infrastructure programs, and ensuring that all Portlanders have access to nature within walking distance of their homes. And whereas the city repledges to double its efforts to integrate nature into the city through innovative green infrastructure, enhanced protection and restoration of fish and wildlife habitat, and cleanup of contaminants in the Willamette River, and aggressively addressing areas of the city that lack access to nature in order to make Portland the nation's most wildlife-friendly city. Now, therefore, I, Charlie Hales, Mayor of the City of Portland, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim June 1 to June 12th to be the 30th annual Great Blue Heron Week in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this week. Let's hear it for our bird and the people that care about it. Mayor Clark, it's a pleasure to have you here, sir.
I'm going to start off and Bud will follow.
Okay. All right.
It was 30 years ago.
Tell us who you are, Mike.
My name is Mike Howard. I'm director of the Urban Green Spaces.
And 30 years ago, I was downtown attending Fish and Wildlife Managers for the Western U.S., and Mayor Bud Clark gave the welcoming address. And during his remarks, he mentioned great blue herons numerous times, how wonderful it was to see them flying across the Portland skyline. I think he referred to his duck hunting blind in Scappoose, if I'm not mistaken. And not to miss an opportunity, I followed him out of the Hilton and said, Bud, you mentioned herons numerous times. There are a few cities around, I think 2 or 3, that have an official city bird. Portland did not. Why not make it the great blue heron? He famously, of course, said, whoop, whoop. told me to go see Ethan Seltzer in Commissioner Mike Lindbergh's office, and 2 weeks later, we had a proclamation establishing the great blue heron as the official city bird. It may sound a little trivial to some people listening perhaps, but every year for 30 years, we've had the opportunity to come to you and to reflect on the amazing progress that we've made, and also to challenge ourselves to ensure herons are going to share the environment with us. One of the things, I don't know if Ethan suggested or not, but I contacted William Stafford, who was then poet laureate for the state of Oregon, and told him what we had done and would he be willing to write a poem. He did. Every time I read it, I actually get teary-eyed. It is so right on in terms of what we need to do in the city. And Bud has offered to come along today and say a few remarks and read the poem.
Wonderful. Welcome.
I have the honor, I was recruited by, Mike's constant pressure continuously going on, so.
Who can say no? We know.
I'm sure you know, yeah. Anyway, this is Spirit of Place by William Stafford, and he's passed away, of course, I think in '93, but this is Spirit of Place. Out of their loneliness for each other, two reeds, or maybe two shadows, lurch forward and become suddenly a life lifted from the dawn to the rain. It is a wilderness come back again, a lagoon within our city reflected in its eye. We live by faith in such presences. It is a test for us, that thin but real undulating figure that promises, if you keep the faith, I will exist at the edge, where your vision joins the sunlight and the rain. Heads in the light, feet that go down into the mud, where the truth is. Whoop, whoop. I wasn't into that. That's not Bill's.
A fine coda.
I've been here in a while, and I see you have as many problems as I remember. You got more problems than I ever had, so good luck.
Yeah. Thanks, Bud. Thank you.
It's good to have this group here to speak for the city bird, because it was an initiative of Mike and Mike Lindbergh, Commissioner Mike Lindbergh at the time, and of course Ethan Seltzer worked for Mike for years.
Good. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate you. Ethan, welcome.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Ethan Seltzer, resident of Portland. And when we started out with this 30 years ago, and I can't believe it was 30 years ago, it really was for fun, but it was serious fun. It was in recognition of the fact that a city, a great city actually, has a lot of different things that it offers the people who are here. If you pay attention, if you're willing to kind of keep those things kicking around. And for us, the heron was one of those things that was emblematic of a deep connection to the landscape that a lot of people in Portland hold very dear, and which could in fact very much be a part of the way we think about the city and the way that the city operates. There's another part of this, which is kind of the notion of the Portland dream, kind of like the American dream. You know, the Portland dream is that a couple of people getting together can have an impact on making and remaking the city. And the legacy of not just a couple of people getting together to ensure that the heron was always a part of this place is actually, I think, emblematic of that idea that in Portland, what we're striving for is a kind of a collectively created livability. And I do hope that that is always the case in many, many different forms. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bob, welcome. That slides over. Yeah, that'll work.
Good morning, Mayor Hales and members of City Council. My name is Bob Salinger. I'm the Conservation Director for the Portland Audubon Society. And we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges ahead, but first we wanted to acknowledge some of the accomplishments that have occurred, especially as we enter this transition phase, because there have been some very significant accomplishments during the last 4 years. I don't have time to go through all of them today, but I wanted to highlight the decision on Pembina propane and the fossil fuel resolution, the decision not to go forward with development on Hayden Island, a comprehensive plan that focuses on brownfield remediation rather than conversion of greenfields to meet industrial land needs, and also the Parks Levy. Those are major accomplishments. They took courage, they took guts, and they're going to leave our city greener and more sustainable for having done them. And so I wanted to express my appreciation on behalf of Audubon and UGI and everybody up here today, to everybody, but especially to you, Mayor Hales, as you go into your transition phase. Looking forward, we do have challenges ahead, and I think the environment, somebody once asked me, when is it going to be enough? when are we going to get to the end game? And the answer is we always can make our environment healthier and more sustainable, and we're always going to be faced with new challenges. And we have some significant ones ahead, but I look at them as opportunities. And so I just want to highlight a few of those. First and foremost, Superfund. Portland has become much more aware of the fact that we live in a city with real pollution problems, air pollution and water pollution. That's come to the forefront in the last year. We have an incredible opportunity ahead of us to, I think, really the most significant opportunity on the river ahead of us to create a river that's healthy for people and for wildlife. And I think too often we focus on what's the minimum we can do under the law as opposed to what's the most we can do to achieve our goals, which are a healthy and sustainable environment. That's going to be entering its public comment phase in a week. And so we really look to the city to take a leadership role in asking, how far can we go? How clean can we make this? Can we get to a point where we lift the fish advisories in Portland Harbor? Because that's going to be the most symbolic thing that we can do to ensure that the river's healthy going forward. You've shown incredible leadership on climate change. Another opportunity is right ahead in terms of floodplains. FEMA has adopted is going to have to adopt new regulations to protect floodplains. We continue to develop in our most vulnerable landscapes, and I think taking a proactive approach to how we develop our floodplains and where we develop and how we mitigate for that is another huge opportunity and challenge right in front of us that we need to get ahead of. Lastly, I'll highlight the challenge of access to nature. Herons are this incredible thing that we have in the city, the ability to see and experience wildlife. We know the human health benefits of access to nature. We also know that a lot of our city doesn't have access to nature still. Despite our green reputation, we still have these equity gaps. And we've made incredible progress over the last 4 years. Commissioner Fritz, you've done an amazing job in East Portland. I think we ought to be setting a goal of filling every equity gap for nature in the next 10 to 20 years. Let's set a real timeline. We know where those equity gaps are, and let's make sure that every family in the city, every person in the city can walk to a park or a natural area. We can list out where they are, and let's knock them off one at a time and get that done and make that a real hardcore goal for our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Questions or comments for this panel?
Just want to thank you for being here. And Mayor Clark, it's probably interesting for you to fast forward, see how this chamber has evolved and how the public discourse has changed and how democracy in action is still working in this body.
Democracy in action.
And Mayor, it's the other day we had Tom Potter with us, and we were reflecting on Mayor Potter's efforts to open the door of this building a little wider to let more people feel welcome. And in effect, every council builds on the accomplishments of a prior mayor and council. And we'd be remiss if we didn't thank you for your glorious service to our city, both as an elected official, but you have a little bit of the Barbara Roberts in you as well, which is we can debate whether your greatest impact in our community was whether you were in service or after service. And we're just grateful that you continue to call Portland home.
That's great.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, it's probably time for me to tell my heron story, which I think Mike's heard. But that the heron is...
The heron that got away.
The heron that got away, yeah. No, sort of, yeah. The heron is both an indicator species, that shows us that our rivers and streams are healthy. So if we have healthy rivers and streams in riparian areas, we'll have a healthy heron population. But it also is this sort of magical, almost prehistoric animal that is a symbol of our city. And so 12 years ago, when Nancy and I were getting married in the Chinese garden, we were with our backs to the pond in this beautiful summer evening. It was just twilight, and facing the officiant on the steps of the pagoda there. And literally in the middle of our vows, a lot of our guests were behind us, on that walkway, seated out there, and the pond in between them and us. While we were saying our vows, there was this whoa in the crowd. And that's because while we were saying our vows, a heron flew majestically across the pond. So if I ever felt blessed to be a Portlander, it was that moment. So I feel like our marriage was personally authorized by the Great Blue Heron, and it just doesn't get any better than that. So thank you all for being here. Let's take a photo with this distinguished group and our mascot, if we may.
That's a wonderful, wonderful story about
That was
the heron.
12 years before Bernie put a bird on it.
Exactly. Oh, you're going to get a picture? Over here. It's quite a deal.
Bud, come over here. Hey, Mike, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Okay, let us move. I think Commissioner Fish, did you have something you
No,
wanted to pull
let's-
first? Just go on right
let's
into
keep
the
going,
regular
Mayor. We're-
agenda, and then
we're
we'll
all
come
set.
back. Yeah, all
We're
right.
set to, we're teed up for 585.
Let's go right into the regular agenda with item 585 then, please.
585, adopt Administrative Rule 13.03, all user restrooms policy.
I want to thank you, Commissioner Fish, for your leadership on this.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm honored to co-sponsor this resolution with you. Jamie Waltz from the Office of Management Finance is with us. I also want to acknowledge the work that other people have put into this, including Betsy Ames, who we hope is resting comfortably and recovering. Mayor, I'm just going to make some very brief opening comments and then reserve the rest for the vote. Very proud today to play a role in bringing forward new city rules and policies on our restrooms. I believe city staff have done an excellent job crafting these rules and policies to reflect our values and the council intentions. And in doing so, they are affirming a very important principle that the city of Portland is welcoming to all. You see, everyone benefits when arbitrary gender-based barriers are removed, including removed from restrooms. Older adults benefit, particularly older adults with caregivers. Parents with young children, people with personal attendants, even transgender individuals. These rules reflect a change that is long overdue at the City of Portland. Multnomah County instituted a similar policy in 2013, and Portland State University, Portland Community College, and Grant High School are all ahead of us. Nationally, we follow cities like Austin, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and our neighbor to the north, Seattle. And as we will learn today, the city is poised over the next few months to change the signs on over 600 single-occupant restrooms to remove the gender-specific designations. I believe this is a proud day for our city and for all of us who care about access and equity. And Mayor, I'm pleased to welcome Jamie from OMF to walk us through what's before us.
Thank you. Welcome, Jamie.
Morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Jamie Waltz. I'm the Strategic Planning and Development Manager for City Facilities. I'm presenting on behalf of Betsy Ames, who's provided the leadership to develop this policy but could not be here today. I'm going to talk about the all-user restroom policy, which is in Exhibit A of the resolution, and I also want to talk about three specific elements. I want to talk about why this policy was created, the current work that's being done to date, and what you should expect to see around the city, and then describe the elements that are in this policy. As Commissioner Fish said, the city supports having restroom options that benefit everyone. All-user restrooms provide a safe and comfortable option for people of all gender identities and expressions, including transgender and non-gender conforming people, parents or other caregivers of children of different genders, and people who need assistance from a caregiver or an attendant. Back in December 17th in 2015, you approved a resolution that directed several different elements. Some of the elements include directing all bureaus to conduct an inventory of all the restrooms across our city-owned facilities and to convert all gender-specific single-occupancy restrooms to all-user restrooms within 6 months of the passage of that resolution. And that includes placing new signage up on those restrooms. And that new signage, which is also in the exhibit as attached to the policy, explains what is behind the door, not who is to use that bathroom. And so it just says that there will be a toilet behind that door. Some of the other elements of the resolution directed us, Office of Management and Finance, to develop a policy for incorporating all-user restrooms in new construction and major renovation. And then it directed OMF to help lead a study that we conduct the feasibility of creating all-user restrooms in all of our city-controlled and city-owned buildings. So since December, a lot of work has been taking place, and I want to highlight some of those accomplishments. We've been busy conducting an inventory of all of our restrooms across the city, and I want to thank the staff from multiple bureaus that own city facilities and properties who have been doing those inventories and helping to convert those restrooms that are single occupant, or gender specific to all user restrooms. So they've been working hard on that. There are over 850 restrooms in the city, in city-controlled facilities, and 600 of those are single-occupant restrooms that you will see being converted. So that's about 70% of those restrooms will be converted to all-user at this time. Parks and Recreation has about 300 of them. So they, through this resolution, are asking for an extension through September 1st to be able to have more time to make those conversions and put new signage up. One of the other things that's going to be happening in July is with the Portland building reconstruction, we have an opportunity to incorporate thoughtful approaches to providing all-user restrooms in that building. So we're going to be doing a pilot of creating a multi-user, gender, all-user bathroom. Right now, our bathrooms in the Portland building are gender-specific multi-occupant. So we'll be converting multi-occupant, all-user bathrooms on the second floor of the Portland building. We will be putting in taller partitions to provide more privacy. We'll also be putting those same partitions on the first floor of the Portland building, but keeping those restrooms gender-specific at this time. But we'll be putting signage directing individuals who want the all-user restrooms to the second floor. And we'll be collecting information on the experiences of the users, and we'll be incorporating that when we get to the design portion of the Portland building. Again, that will be happening sometime in July.
Why did you choose to put the old user restrooms on this floor you need to take an elevator to access rather than putting them on the first floor?
You know, I don't know the answer to that, and I can find out why the choice was for the second floor.
Presumably, since it's still in the design phase, we might change that.
Oh, yeah. This is just a test, and when we go to the reconstruction, we'll look at accessibility and options for the entire.
It goes without saying, both for today and going forward, to the mayor and Commissioner Fritz, that we're very open to fine-tuning and adapting this going forward. The goal is, we have a audacious goal, but how we get there, there's some flexibility, and if there's a better way, we'd obviously like to consider that.
Thank you.
And then we are starting to draft up the scope of work for conducting the feasibility study to look at all of our restrooms across the city-controlled and city-owned properties. So then the last piece is the Administrative Rule 13.03, which is part of the resolution today that we're asking you to adopt. We drafted this policy with solicited input and feedback from city property and facility managers, equity and inclusion managers, HR, Office of Equity, Human Rights, and employees across the city. Before I get into some of the elements of the policy, there's a couple definitions that are helpful to understand. One of the elements of this policy is that it applies to city-controlled buildings. And city-controlled buildings are those buildings that are both owned and occupied by the city and for which we have facility-related decision-making authority for. So it doesn't apply to those city bureaus that are in out-lease spaces, but for our buildings that we have ownership and control over. And then the other definition that's helpful is restroom bank. And so a restroom bank is used to describe a suite of restrooms located in close proximity that are designed to meet plumbing codes requirements for defined space. So for example, on this floor of City Hall, you have a female and a male restroom separated by council chambers. That is still considered one restroom bank because it serves the code requirements for having restroom fixtures on this floor. So with the new policy, we are requiring that new construction or substantial renovation like the Portland building incorporate all-user design and that there be at least 10% of the toilet fixtures be in an all-user restroom with at least one all-user restroom per bank. So for example, if there were 20 toilets on this floor, we would have 2 all-user toilet available, or we would have 1 all-user restroom available per this bank. So that's how that is set up to work. It also requires that renovation projects that have a hard construction cost of $500,000 or more assess the feasibility of doing some sort of all-user restroom design. It may not be feasible on every project, but that at least this is a way to look at those projects and see if there's a feasibility. It also stipulates what was designated in the December resolution, that all single occupancy restrooms be converted to all user, and also reiterates the feasibility study that we will be doing. So I want to again thank staff for all of their hard work in helping us develop the policy and doing all the hard work up to this date and then the future changes you'll be seeing.
Maybe as part of this, you put out some examples of signage. Are you gonna preview that today, or should we just go online?
Just to go online and see the signs.
I know a lot of thought went into that, and I compliment you on where you landed, because it's iconic, very simple, and visually clear. And I look forward to them being placed there. First phase of all 600 seats.
Other questions for Jamie?
Commissioner Fish, I really appreciate your leadership in this and your partnership with the Office of Management and Finance. This is the most basic of basic services, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Commissioner Randy Leonard, who first got us starting about bathroom facilities and the importance thereof, particularly public bathroom facilities, and it does make a difference. So I just have one request, and it's not in the, I don't see a place to put it, and that is that to me it's not an all-user restroom if it doesn't have seat covers. And if there's one thing that could enhance my enjoyment of Providence Park, it's the fact that the bathrooms don't have seat covers. And it not only, when I tell this to my daughter, she goes, "Mom, everybody knows that you don't catch things from toilet seats." And I looked it up, and in fact, she's correct. And then I mentioned that to one of my male friends, and he goes, "Ew, there's still the ew factor." And it wastes bathroom tissue, because most people, then you do the origami thing, and then you don't have any bathroom tissue for its intended purpose. So I would request that. I was actually in the fire station on the Esplanade for Chief Jensen's retirement, and I was very pleased to see a gender-neutral bathroom and no seat covers. I was like, what's up with this? I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's a very good suggestion.
I will feel very satisfied if at all of those locations we could just take care of that simple need, because it is important. Thank you.
Other questions, guidance for Jamie? Thank you so much. Do you have any invited testimony?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see if there are any questions for you at the end. But anyone signed up to speak
We
on
have
this?
2 signed up.
Okay, come on.
Shedrick Wilkins and Crystal Linsky.
Okay, come on up, please.
Crystal, will you come up?
I'm Shedrick J. Wilkins, and I'm an expert on this topic because I work for a supermarket. Cleaning bathrooms is a very hard situation, and about a year ago it boiled over where we have open bathrooms at the supermarket, and I have to clean them. And I made a suggestion, they're open. Anybody can come in there, and if there's some sort of mess in there, I have to go clean it. I immediately was written up one time for staying in the bathrooms, and it wasn't defaulting that I was doing my job, but I was spying on women, and not to go out of the room and get somebody else to do it who's a woman. That was 10 years ago, but recently my store is very busy, and I offered to be transgendered to go in and clean the women's bathroom, right? And this suggestion was rejected by women managers. And it's a very tough thing. My comment is you should continue to do experiments in schools and public buildings, but I doubt if it will ever be something where supermarkets are going to have transgendered bathrooms. It's a major obstacle. It's basically rounded up that I'm spying on women. I think there's a thing called passive transgenderism where you just use the bathroom, but there are people who want to be overt and wear lipstick, communicate with other women, and that's not going to go. And it's funny too, the little kids, I used to go in the bathroom when I was 5, little girls at my supermarket can go in the men's room because a man doesn't want to lose sight of a child. So it's kind of weird how this, I've learned a lot about this. I would just say experiments are needed in public facilities, but don't think it's going to spill over into the private sector at all. It's a,
And this is not a mandate for the private sector. It's just a city policy.
Yeah, you make two great points. One is, we're not, as the mayor said, extending this policy mandate to the rest of the city. And number two is, Cornerstone is about choice. We will be giving people more choices.
well, and I support that. I mean, and any issue about developing transgendered bathrooms or hiring that done, my store will not pay the price for that. I wish they would.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Crystal, you wanna be next?
John Pilger is making a new documentary. He's still alive. Oh, I'm done. Okay, so
Put your name in
Crystal Elinsky, and I represent 10,000. Thank you very much for this. Now I forgot what I want to say because I'm thinking about all the bathrooms I've cleaned. But yeah, I like it outside in where I go when I come downtown. Oh man, the bathroom's always so dirty and they don't have any ventilation. So build them right. Oh yeah, human manure. We could do some great things with the God, I never got my plot. They stole my plot from me like 5-6 years ago, and they promised they'd give me a slot again when the next one came up, and they never did. So I need to look into that. But I'll ask Amanda Fritz to look into that for me. But we need to think of good ways to make toilets. I think the Leonard Loo was a really bad idea, especially when we started suing other cities for copying it. What I'd really like us to do with other cities, instead of tapping, what do I always say? Gosh, I'm spacey now. We're always applauding ourselves. Oh, look, we're like Seattle and Denver, but this is our chance to make a proclamation and challenge those states that dare to discriminate against people. This is ridiculous, and we need to make a political statement. I would like this to go further, and I trust that you guys can do that. What was the other thing I wanted to say? Charles? Yeah. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, I'm really interested to hear about the feedback on people's experiences. I think it's the funniest thing I ever heard. But oh yeah, so housing. From the homelessness angle, we see a lot, incrementally more and more transgender people in the community, and that is a reflection, of course, of what's going wrong. It's very sad. It's kind of bizarre that it took the transgender people to get us more toilets, because we've been asking for that for a long time. Rose Festival gets more toilets. Homeless people don't. But maybe we can push this number, increase it, and I like to say, oh yeah, and in boy, I'm just going everywhere, but this is fun. So Korea, people share bathrooms, women and men. You just walk past the men in the pissoirs, and the women kind of have a little stall, and it's just bizarre that we're so hung up on this topic. And obviously I am too, because I keep talking, but this is it. We need a breakthrough, and pooping and peeing is a human right. Thank you.
Thanks. Joe, please.
My name is Joe Walsh. For the record, I represent Individuals for Justice. One of the things, when my wife and I were watching television and we learned about this, she is much less radical than I am. And she looked at me and she said, why is this an issue? What is the big thing about restrooms? Why are we even, in a process of trying to figure out who should use a restroom or who shouldn't use a restroom? It seems that it's so basic. If you have to go to the bathroom, you have to go to the bathroom. And there shouldn't be a label on it that says you can't use it. One of the things that I responded to, I did, we have these festivals and we have these gatherings where we put hundreds or 50 porta potties around, and they're all used by everybody. And it doesn't seem to be a huge problem. So why did we get caught in this thing? A word of caution, though. I'm not a libertarian, but I get very nervous when government on any level starts legislating what we should do. So be careful with this. I know this is just the opening salvo. This is here. This is what you control. And I understand that. And it's not out in Starbucks and other places. That's my understanding, that this ordinance wouldn't do that. But it's an opening. It's a message. I would rather see a whole bunch of work done in the community to have people understand this is really not a big issue. You know, it's a basic right, if you will. Maybe on a lower scale than human rights, but it's a right. Especially somebody like me, when I'm downtown and I need to use a restroom, I have a card that says I have emergency medical that I need to use the restroom. So I can go into any establishment and use their restroom. So I would just caution you a little bit about getting too excited about this and forcing it on people, and do a lot of PR work on this. Because a lot of people look at me in conversations and they say, what? What are they doing? So they need to know what you're doing. So I would caution you that we support it. We congratulate you on taking it on. It's a toughie. And good luck.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Welcome.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Charles Johnson. I can't remember which Frenchman it was, maybe Victor Hugo, who reminded us that the law in its majesty makes it equally illegal for the rich and the poor to steal bread. And it's equally illegal and difficult to you. If these windows were open, we could see the 2 blocks that separate the men's bathroom from the women's bathroom, all of which will be available to whomever soon, except after midnight, when if you're homeless or not, you're locked out of the bathroom. We would rather have you urinate and defecate in public than use the bathroom. So even though these moves towards gender inclusion and choice options during limited hours for everybody at public bathrooms is good, we still have a ways to go to make the city fully functional, addressing basic human needs for the way that people live 24 hours a day here. I know there's some hope that we can have everybody sheltered next to, or not immediately next to, but near and with indoor plumbing sometime within the next year. But when we're talking about bathrooms, we need to face the reality that we're still doling out potties as a privilege. If you have a life where you can go home to a bathroom, we can lock up the public bathrooms at midnight. The loo, of course, there are the 3 loos to service 3,000 homeless people. But, you know, and so in addition to the political correctness, and as Crystal mentioned, I know that the mayor, you know, mentioned whichever state passed its ridiculous discrimination law so we couldn't go visit the USS Portland when it was in the Red South. It is true that we want to go beyond Seattle and be in a position where we can do the best both on gender equity and choice and on providing service, basic human needs services, restrooms to the neediest people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak on this resolution? All right, then let's proceed to take a vote, please.
Mayor Hales, Commissioner Fritz, this is a proud day for our city because it's another example of us taking our values and translating those values into action. The City of Portland is committed to providing a safe and inclusive workplace for all of our employees, and we are committed to welcoming everyone in our community when they visit us. Today, we're taking another step forward in that spirit. There's a number of people I want to thank today, and I want to start with our friends of the Office of Management and Finance, both Jamie Waltz and Betsy Ames. We sometimes hear that our form of government is inefficient, and the hardest thing to do is to get everybody to work together. I think this is a conspicuous example of leadership at OMF and collaboration with all the bureaus to get us to this point, because we set a very big goal and a very tight timeline, and we have largely met it. So I want to thank everybody that has participated in this process. It's really been a model of engaging the community in getting to this point. So to all the bureaus and all the leaders and our friends at OMF, a big thank you. I also want to thank some of our community partners who have from the beginning helped us get it right. Basic Rights Oregon, SMERC, Disability Rights Oregon, Elders in Action, Transactive, Flush, Multnomah County. That's just, that's not an exclusive list, but those are some of the people in the forefront of removing barriers. I want to thank Jamie Dunphy on my team, who's been working tirelessly on this issue, and I want to thank Aja Blair, a young man who used to work for me, who's gone off on a spiritual journey. But this is an issue he cared deeply about, and it arose out of his own life experience. And I'm proud that this council is moving forward to put this into action. And let's be clear, the cornerstone of what we are doing is providing the public with more choice. And we're providing safe options. And that's a good thing. And I think Joe's right. The ability to use a restroom is a basic right. We can argue where it falls in all of the rights that we cherish, but it's a pretty basic right. And I'm proud today that we're joining with the county and sister cities up and down the West Coast and making a very strong statement that in the future, our single-stall restrooms will be available to all, and that as we move forward to implement the broader policy, we'll be giving people meaningful choice. Thank you, colleagues, for your support. Thanks, staff, for your excellent work. And today I'm proud to vote aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Fish, for your leadership on this and indeed for getting it done in such quick manner that Portland Parks and Recreation had to request an extension to September to get all of our single-user restrooms with appropriate signage. So I appreciate both the speed of bringing this resolution forward and the understanding that with so many restrooms in parks that we need a little more time. I brought up the seat cover issues, and I was reminded the first time my grandmother visited me here in Portland, she must have been about 80, and when we met her off the plane at PDX, she went to the bathroom, and she came out. She was astonished about the seat covers. She had never seen a seat cover, and the privilege that we have living here where you can go to the bathroom and just assume that there's going to be amenities, and indeed that you assume you can go to the bathroom. That was brought home to me there. And then lately the issue of can everybody use the bathroom whenever they need to be able to go, and we should be able to do that. I'm very proud of the Pioneer Courthouse Square Board who have been wrestling with improving the restrooms at Pioneer Courthouse Square as promised in the bond measure, the 2014 Fix Our Parks bond measure, and they keep coming up with more and more innovative designs. There was mention of the Chapman and Lonsdale Square bathrooms, and I was thinking also of earlier today that yes, we have the right to free speech and that we have to be mindful of not abusing that privilege. And yes, we have the right to go to the bathroom, and we have the right to expect that others will not abuse that privilege. So one of the challenges at Pioneer Courthouse Square is people leaving needles in the baby changing facilities and not taking care of those facilities. And so I'll be coming in the next budget process to ask for funding for an attendant for the most widely used restroom in Portland, so that not only are the towels kept stocked and the rooms cleaned, and thank you, Mr. Shedrick, for I thought that would wake you up, for reminding us that we have wonderful people who clean our bathrooms, and that we all need to be responsible for wise use of them and for reporting or providing services of that nature. And again, in Europe, that's something that is more routine, that there is a friendly attendant who can give you directions to the bus stop, as well as providing soap and towels and security. So it's an ongoing challenge to provide funding for these services, and I appreciate the work that's being done. Aye.
Hills.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Fish and Jamie. You know, the English poet George Hebert said, living well is the best revenge. And so I think when we contemplate backsliding that's going on in places like North Carolina and Mississippi and the eruption of intolerance, you know, what do we as Portlanders do about that? And I think what we do is we demonstrate that we live well by practicing openness and inclusion and tolerance, and that we live better because that's what our values are, and those are our values, and that's how we live here. And I am enough of an optimist to believe that if we live well in openness and tolerance and inclusion, that eventually backward thinking like that will fall, and this will be accepted and not worth commenting on in the rest of the country. But we can do this now and do it right, and I appreciate that that's exactly what we're up to here today. Thank you very much. Aye. Good work. Thank you. Let's move on, please, to the next item on the regular agenda, which is 586.
Item 586, proclaim June 2nd, 2016 to be Gun Violence Awareness Day in Portland.
So let me invite up a panel, and I'll then read the proclamation. Penny Okamoto from Ceasefire Oregon is here, Ken Dulio from Portland Police Bureau Gang Enforcement Team, and Paul Kemp, welcome, and some others as well. And I'll read this proclamation and turn it over to this panel. Whereas every day, 91 Americans are killed by gun violence and the lives of countless others are injured. Americans are 25 times more likely to be murdered with guns than people in other developed countries. And whereas protecting public safety in the communities they serve is our highest responsibility, along with law enforcement officers, and how we address that and how we're best positioned to understand that is critical. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from dangerous people. And whereas June 2nd, 2016 would have been the 19th birthday of Hadia Pendleton, a teenager who marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade and was tragically shot and killed just a few weeks later. And whereas to help honor Hadia and the 91 Americans whose lives are cut short by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated June 2nd as the second annual National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadia's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange, they chose this color to announce themselves and symbolize the value of human life. And whereas by wearing orange on June 2nd, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives and lost human potential of Americans stolen by gun violence. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge all we can do to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and keep our children safe. Now, therefore, I, Charlie Hales, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, City of Roses, do hereby proclaim June 2nd, 2016 to be Gun Violence Awareness Day in Portland, and encourage all residents to support their local community's efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives this day. Thank you all for your work on this issue. Again, as somebody who hears from the police bureau in the middle of the night when we've lost another Portlander, I know that there are a lot of people here in the city that are working very hard to prevent gun violence and, unfortunately, to deal with it when it occurs. But this movement is, I think, a really important part of who we are as a country now, and I want to thank you all for your leadership in this work and for carrying on in the face of personal tragedy to help make life better for other people. Penny, would you like to start?
Thank you very much, Commissioner Fritz and Mayor Hales. Thank you very much. I appreciate this. My name is Penny Okamoto. I'm the Executive Director of Ceasefire Oregon and the Ceasefire Oregon Education Foundation. We work to prevent gun violence by advocating for effective, common-sense gun laws and by educating the public about safe storage, current gun laws, and suicide prevention. My thanks to all of you for being here today. I'm particularly honored to be here with the mayor and with the commissioners, also Paul Kemp and Robert Ewell of Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership and the Portland Police Bureau. My thanks to all of them for their great work to increase awareness of gun violence prevention in the state of Oregon. For years, Portland has been in the forefront of gun violence prevention. Mayor Adams worked to establish child access prevention laws. He established a requirement to report lost and stolen guns, which helps curtail gun trafficking, and the city supported Ceasefire Oregon Education Foundation's gun turn-ins. Mayor Hales and the Portland City Commissioners continue their great work today. In fact, Oregon and Portland are known nationwide for our work to stop gun violence and for our great coalition partners, including Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership, Americans for Responsible Solutions, Moms Demand Action, the Brady Campaign, all of whom are members of the Oregon Coalition for Gun Safety. So Wear Orange Day is highlighted so we can talk about gun violence awareness. As you said earlier, Wear Orange was begun by friends of Hydea Pendleton. I won't repeat her story. We are here today in honor of her and in honor of all the victims of gun violence. Ceasefire Oregon is proud to take part in National Gun Violence Awareness Day. But this is awareness not only about how many people are killed, injured, and intimidated by guns, but also about the scope of what we can do to reduce this tragedy we witness daily. We can increase the standards of gun ownership. We can enhance the accountability of federally licensed firearms dealers. We can implement safety standards for gun manufacturers with simple concepts like chamber-loaded indicators, magazine disconnect mechanisms, and the implementation of smart gun technology. All of these details are available at our new website, ceasefireoregon.org. And I bring this up in particular because our new website has been completely revamped and redesigned, including our logo, by Portland's own company, Cloud4. After the Umpqua shooting, Cloud4 wanted to do something to help. So Jason Grigsby and all the folks at Cloud4 took it upon themselves to contact Ceasefire Oregon and offered their services to completely revamp our site and our logo. Cloud4 stepped up with their own special skills. And today, I challenge all people and all organizations in Portland and in Oregon to do the same thing. What kind of special skills do you have? What kind of special skills can you take to stop gun violence? What can one person do? You can wear orange, just like I am today. And what does that mean? That means you talk to your friends about safe storage of guns and about the ways to reduce gun violence and about the prevalence of suicide, especially in Oregon today. We lose about one person a day to gunshot suicide in Oregon alone. You can buy orange. That means if you own guns, buy a gun lock, buy a gun safe, practice safe storage. You can also make sure that you patronize gun sense businesses. And you can vote orange by supporting gun sense legislation and gun violence prevention groups like Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership, Moms Demand Action, Brady, ARS, and Ceasefire Oregon. Wearing orange began when a group of teenagers wanted to honor their friend, Hydea Pendleton. So please, I urge everyone to be inspired by their actions and think about what you can do to vote orange, buy orange, and wear orange. And my deepest thanks to the City of Portland and the commissioners for their action they take today in proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kemp, Mr. Ewell, welcome. You, Sergeant Dulio first? Okay, whatever order you'd like.
You can move that whole thing down.
Slide that whole box towards Sergeant Dulio and talk loud. Portable.
I'm Sergeant Ken Dulio with the Police Bureau. I've been employed 19 years. Currently assigned to gang enforcement. I've been with gang enforcement for the last 6. Just kind of some stats where we're at in the city of Portland. In 2010, we saw kind of a dramatic increase in gang violence and gun violence. Most of our gang violence is gun violence, probably 90% or above. Where the numbers almost doubled up to about 100 a year. That stayed consistent for about 4 years until last year, where that number that had doubled in 2010, then last year doubled to almost 200. Last year we had 185 shootings that were gang-related. This doesn't count non-gang related shootings, just gang-related. We had approximately 1,200 casings that we recovered from shots being fired. Our gang enforcement unit seized 200 plus guns off of gang members or associates. This year, our gang violence response rate is right at the same pace as it was last year. So we have that increase from 2010, then this big increase last year. We've been at that number, that same pace, which is, it kind of follows a national trend. Portland, when I first became an officer, I kind of thought, Portland, we're little old Portland. We're a big city. We have big city problems. I personally have seen the impact of gun violence on people as far as being injured, being killed, on property, innocent people in the background, homes, bullets that fly through homes and barely miss people. One bullet at a shooting at Mount Tabor a few years ago landed in the crib of a baby who was in the crib. Fortunately wasn't injured. I've also seen the impact on the community in fear, especially out on the east side where we've had a big increase the last several years. Community fear about gang violence and gun violence. These shootings, I think as an officer before I was in gang enforcement, when I first started, there was more shootings that were one shooter maybe versus another shooter. This year, we saw this trend where there was multiple shooters, 3 or 4 guns, multiple calibers. It was very routine to go to crime scenes and collect anywhere from 20 to 40 casings, which is pretty astounding. I think that, this is a big issue for our city. I think it's a good fight to fight, and I think we should continue our strong efforts against gun violence, and I support this proclamation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hi, my name is Paul Kemp. I live in Happy Valley, and I'm the president of Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership, and Robert and I are both board members. I'm also a gun owner and a hunter, and like most Americans, never thought my life would be affected by gun violence. On Tuesday, December 11th, 2012, our family was touched by gun violence when my brother-in-law, Steve Forsyth, was shot in the back of the head and killed instantly by a young man armed with a Stag 15 assault rifle at the Clackamas Town Center Mall. My sister and her daughter had just left Steve in the mall and walked into Macy's when the shooting started. My sister and niece heard the shot that killed Steve. My sister called me at work. She was frantic and crying as she could not reach Steve on his cell phone. I left work immediately and headed to the mall to pick him up. We then waited at the sheriff's office for over 4 hours before they could tell us that Steve had been shot and killed. The first words from my sister after hearing Steve had been killed was, "Did he suffer?" The detectives assured us Steve did not suffer. He was dead by the time he hit the floor. As I made the phone calls to tell family from out of state and told them Steve had been killed, I'll never forget the screams I heard from the other end of these phone calls. However, we still had to tell Steve's son that his dad had been killed. Telling Alex that his father had been killed that morning or that afternoon was the absolute worst moment of my life. Several of us personally affected by the Clackamas Town Center shooting formed Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership based in part on what we learned from the mall shooting. We wanted to create a voice in the middle for gun owners so that gun owners would speak up about safe and responsible ownership. There are too many loud, extreme voices in the far right claiming that we all need to be armed to protect ourselves. No other industrialized country in the world has this high level of gun violence that claims about 88 U.S. citizens every day. Every time our family hears about another shooting, whether it is here in Portland, such as at the Reynolds High School, or down in Roseburg at UCC, we have an understanding of what those families are going through. These gun violence deaths are not a nightmare you wake up from. These violent deaths are forever. Steve was not in the wrong place at the wrong time. The shooter was. The students at Reynolds High School were not, and UCC were not in the wrong place at the wrong time. The shooter was. These gun violence victims were going about their daily lives as you and I do every day. As a gun owner, I take the responsibility of owning a gun and handling a gun very seriously. My guns are locked up, unloaded, and the ammunition stored separately. That was how I was raised, and that was how I've raised my son. At 6:30 a.m. the morning following Steve's murder, a sheriff's officer told us that the Stag 15 assault rifle the shooter used was purchased legally by the gun owner, but the shooter took the unlocked, loaded gun from his friend's home the morning of the shooting. We also found out that Oregon does not have any safe storage gun laws, so the negligent gun owner would not face any criminal penalties. This negligent gun owner, Sean Cates, also had several other loaded and unlocked guns lying around his residence too. The gun owner's poor decisions have impacted many lives forever with no consequence to him. Oregon needs a safe storage gun law, so negligent gun owners face legal consequences. Enacting a safe storage gun law should lead to behavioral changes by gun owners. Other ways that gun violence has, or the threat of gun violence has affected our family. I have a question for everybody in the room. How many of you in school ever had to do an active shooter drill or a lockdown drill? Raise your hand if you ever had to do one. My son, I'm in my mid-50s. When I was in school, all we did was we practiced fire drills and tornado drills, not lockdown drills. In his senior year, my son at Clackamas High School had to do a lockdown drill. My daughter, who is a teacher, an elementary school teacher here in the Portland area school district, received training during her student teaching period on how to deal with a shooter if he gained access to her classroom. The sheriff's deputy told the other teachers, including my daughter, that their first action should be to flee the classroom. However, if she and her students could not flee the classroom, the sheriff's deputy showed the teachers how to grab the end of the rifle barrel and push it to the ground. It's a lever, and my daughter's 5'2", and it's just a lever. It's very easy to do. The deputy then told the teachers to get any remaining students in the classroom to attack the shooter with sharp pencils, books, fists, kick them, bite them, whatever. This action is supposed to continue until the shooter is incapacitated or subdued by police. I never envisioned these school drills would be part of my kids' lives. I believe as a country, we can do better than this. In Oregon, more people die annually from gun violence than traffic deaths. This is also the case in about half the states across the country. Traffic deaths have been declining across the country for the last 20 years, while gun violence deaths have remained at the same level for years on end. Why does reducing gun violence deaths seem to be such a problem for the U.S. that we cannot solve? According to an article published in Mother Jones magazine on April 15, 2015, gun violence cost the U.S. approximately $229 billion in 2012. This equals a cost to every American of about $700 in 2012. For example, Clackamas Town Center Mall was closed for 3 days during the Christmas shopping season after the shooting there. That left hundreds of employees out of work. The mall owner had to make repairs to the mall due to the shooting damage, plus the crime scene cleanup. The mall staff spent untold hours dealing with our family, the Ewell family, and the Shevchenko family after the shooting, not to mention all the time the mall owner staff spent with the police investigation, their own insurance company, additional security after the mall reopened. In Steve's case, there were about 1,500 people at his memorial service. We had family and friends that took time off from work, and many flew in to Portland from all over the country. The Clackamas County Sheriff's Office also produced a 900-page police report for this shooting. Thankfully, the shooter took his own life, so the affected families did not have to endure a trial, nor did our community have to bear that cost of that trial. There is no single solution to reducing the daily toll of gun violence. It will take police departments, elected officials, public health doctors, gun retailers, gun owners, and non-gun owners to bring about the necessary cultural and legal forces to reduce the daily incidence of gun violence in our community. Thank you for giving me your time and your attention.
Thank you. Mr. Ewell, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Mayor Hales. Commissioner Fritz and Commissioner Fish, thank you so much for allowing us to come here and speak to you today.
Sir, move the mic a little closer to you. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I also want to thank you for initiating this petition to have Wear Orange Day, or for Gun Awareness Day today. It's a sad time in our society as a whole that we have to have a special day to be aware of gun violence in this country. Very sad day. There are several ways that we could reduce gun violence, and as a board member for Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership, I believe that we all have a right to own and bear arms in a responsible manner. I'm not going to go over all the statistics and everything and the costs and such, but I can certainly tell you that had not I had and my family had the support from the community, my life would have been completely changed as it is. I would have lost my house, possibly could have lost my job. It has changed my family life in many, many ways. Let's put it that way. So gun violence goes way beyond the highlights that you read about in the paper. People just go along and forget that people are shot every day. Certainly the police officers alluded to the fact that gun violence has increased double what it has in the past. The number of guns he's recovered has doubled. And one way to stop the access to weapons is for every responsible gun owner to lock his weapon up. Certainly, gang members put a very high value on guns. It's almost more valuable to them to have a gun than it is to own the drugs that they use the gun to procure. If gun owners were held accountable for their weapons and were required to keep them locked up, certainly home burglaries would not be so popular and guns would not be so easily stolen. As Paul alluded to, had the gun owner simply locked his weapon up, the Clackamas Town Center killings probably would not have happened. The man that did that would have had to take time to think about what he was doing. It's been statistically proven that people who commit suicide with gun, if they have to stop and wait, even just for a few seconds, that gives them a chance to stop their actions and think twice about what they're about to perform. So again, I want to thank you so much for helping make this Oregon and Portland area more aware of gun violence by proclaiming today Wear Orange Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments from my colleagues?
So this is by far the most important scarf I'm wearing today. This one I had to go back to my office to get. This one I put on this morning in honor of your families and the work that you're doing. And thank you for being here today. I know how hard it is to talk about sudden tragic loss ongoing, and yet you're doing it because it's necessary. I'd like to add one thing to the Act Orange list, and that is for parents to ask their children's play dates, are there guns in your house? That happened to me when my first son was in grade school, and he had set up a play date with David, and I was looking forward to it, and his mom called and said, are there guns in your house? And if there are they locked up? And she said that it's because one of her friends, when she was in grade school, was killed in a senseless accident. It's not an accident. It's, as you say, the shooter is in the wrong place at the wrong time. Mr. Yule, I'm mindful of your daughter. Mayor Hales and I attended a gun violence attend at Peninsula Park a few months ago. Absolutely dreadful day in the rain, and lots of people came out to wear orange ponchos and to walk around in honor of your families and the work that you've done. And something your daughter said in honor of her mom, Cindy Yule, she said, it doesn't get better. She's not in a better place, and this didn't happen for a reason. And I think we all need to embrace that. 91 deaths per day in this country. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with our society that we cannot say that, yes, there are responsibilities to owning a gun, just like there's a responsibility to free speech, and there's a responsibility when you use the bathroom to leave it in decent shape. What is wrong with us that we cannot do something about this? And thank you for doing something about it. Thank you, Mayor Hales, for bringing this to our attention and for spending time on it today, because it does matter. It does matter, and we need to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Hales, let me echo what Commissioner Fritz said, and thank you for bringing this forward, and thanks to each of you for joining us today. And when one of you said that gun violence now exceeds traffic deaths in our country, that's just a shameful statistic. And I do not have a personal history with someone in my family, the victim of gun violence, but I do have a personal history with losing a parent to a traffic accident. And it follows you the rest of your life. And if these are deaths that are preventable, then we should do everything in our power. A couple of summers ago, I got a text from my daughter who was on Alberta Street, and she was about to go on a Sultan Straw with some friends, and a firefight erupted, and there was a gang shooting, and she was right in the middle of it. And it is a minor miracle that she wasn't injured in that. But that's, something that a parent shouldn't have to worry about when their daughter goes out on an evening with friends, that they could get shot senselessly. Mayor Hales issued a memo this week on transition issues, and one of the things I really liked about the memo, I liked a lot about the memo, but one of the things I particularly liked was the mayor has encouraged the mayor-elect to go out on a ride-along with the gang enforcement team. And it's both a eye-opening and a terrible experience. And I did it in the fall, and not much happened until about 10 o'clock at night on a Friday, but between 10 and 1, there was a triple homicide, two crime scenes, 3 people dead, 5 people shot. And that's just, we can't allow that in our community. It just is not. One was in Mount Tabor, one was at a strip club in outer southeast. They were all surrounded by, in the heart of residential areas. We can't allow that. So I'll just close by saying that every time thoughtful, sensible people like you come forward and use terms like responsible gun ownership, and the mayor leads an effort about responsible gun ownership, I think we should all be offended when others, our critics, then go into the media and say this is an attack on the Second Amendment. And we have to say that's not acceptable. It's not an attack on the Second Amendment to be in favor of responsible gun ownership and saving lives. It's just the big lie that keeps getting recycled in our politics. But Charlie, thank you for bringing this forward today, and I'm proud to join Amanda in supporting you.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank each of you, Penny, you and your organization, the work you do, Mr. Kemp, Mr. Yule, for turning your family's tragedy into a cause that all of us should be supporting actively. And Sergeant Dooley, you and everyone in the Police Bureau for all the work that you're doing. One ride-along I was on was with Officer Schmautz in East Precinct, and like your experience, Nick, it was one of those nights where there was an incident, and actually it happened right in front of East Precinct, where a young man turned into a crowd of other young people and began firing. Fortunately, didn't hit anyone, though if you go to East Precinct now, you'll see a divot in one of the window frames where one of the bullets struck. Two of our officers were coming out of the front door, and seeing that he was in a crowd of young people, held their fire, even though he was actively shooting at teenagers. He was chased around the corner. He dropped the weapon. He was taken into custody. And a couple of weeks later, his father came to our Community Peace Collaborative meeting and thanked our officers for the restraint they showed, because his son was going into the criminal justice system, but was still alive. So thank you, and all of your officers, all your fellow officers, for the work that you're doing to try to address this crisis. So we appreciate you calling on all of us to be your partners in this work. Finally, normally when we have proclamations about happy things like Rose Festival princesses or sports teams, we take photographs and applaud. I think the only thing that's appropriate at this moment is if we could all just take a moment of silence for all the victims. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's take a 1-minute recess, and then we'll return to the rest of our work.
Two people just were shot and killed.
Thank you very much, and move on to item 588, please.
588, accept report from Design Week Portland on designing for civic engagement.
Okay, we have a presentation about this from Sealy Pines and Kate Bingham. Come on, Bingham and Burt, and appreciate you waiting and being here to talk about good design and why it matters, and civic engagement and why that matters. So welcome.
Can I give these to you
Technology, it
guys?
takes a village to start our system. Please, please. Okay. Oh, that's cool. Buildings need care. Yes, they do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ah, great. Well, we appreciate having you here very much. Thank
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Mayor Hales, Commissioner Fritz, Commissioner Fish. We really appreciate the opportunity to share what we learned this year during our festival. I'm Sealy Pines. I'm the director of Design Week Portland.
And I'm Kate Bingham and Burt, and I'm on the board of directors, and I'm also a professor at Portland State University in graphic design.
So we're going to start out by just giving you a little bit of background about Design Week, and then we'll go on to the headquarters public engagement that we held on Pioneer Courthouse Square during the festival this year and what we learned.
And we, of course, have a visual presentation that isn't quite coming up yet, but we're just going to go forward. So anyway, Design Week Portland is a week-long citywide series of programs exploring the process, craft, and practice of design across all disciplines. Our mission is to increase appreciation and awareness about design and its far-reaching effects on matters of cultural and social relevance, including community development, education, and the economy. So we started in 2012 as a collective of local independent events for the design community, and we pooled our resources together, and we wanted to share our audiences. So there were already several different events going on, like Creative Mornings, Design Speaks, Portland State's Show and Tell, We Make has a sketch exchange, there was Web Visions. As you can see, there were a lot of independent events happening, but we had a sense that, of course, a high tide would raise all of our ships collectively. There was no central infrastructure, only a dozen organizers galvanizing their networks over the course of 5 months. And what we lacked in infrastructure and funding, we made up with design. The two things we were really good at were getting people on board and branding what we were doing. And so it really worked. What happened from there was that we had tons of workshops, panel discussions, fairs, instruction, auctions, readings, portfolio reviews, tours, exhibits, celebrations, and happenings. And the first year we had over 100 events and open houses. This year, in addition to the depth of independent events that make Design Week Portland amazing, we added a main stage. So what the main stage is 2 days of speakers from a range of design disciplines, which kicked off the festival and brought 500 people together for conversations about where design is today and where it's headed. And soon we're going to be launching an online journal pairing talks from the main stage with think pieces from local writers this summer to spread design thinking from Portland far and wide. We've also started thinking about ways to galvanize the collective talents of the design community for tangible impact in the city. We partnered with the John Yon Center and the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to facilitate a design competition around the proposed Green Loop that's happening. And so what we had was an international jury with entries as far from Prague. And the winners were a young group of local designers titled Untitled Studio, and they were awarded $20,000 to further develop their winning concept in collaboration with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability.
So Design Week has grown, and now in our 4th year, we have over 5,000 people attending the festival each time we mount it. We have over 100 events, over 100 open houses. We have over 100,000 people visiting our website each year. So that sort of gives you by the numbers the kind of reach that we have. But we're really here today to talk to you about our headquarters. And when we first started out, our headquarters was actually a type truck, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of like a food truck, except instead of food, there was a printing studio inside of it. And each day we would relocate the truck based on where all the events were happening and hand out programs and, oh, hi, are you gonna help? Yay!
Put an SOS out for the experts.
Yay, IT experts are the best. So we really didn't have the resources to do much more than try to do outreach and let people know about our programming. By the 3rd year, we had kind of figured out how to do the core of what we were doing, and we were looking for a central shared experience. So we thought we would create a headquarters on Pioneer Courthouse Square, Portland's living room, to both provide an address for people who were engaged with the festival to come and experience what we were doing as Design Week Portland, but also to have a way to cross paths with the public and have more of a conversation with lay people about design. So what we did the first year was to set up 3 geodesic domes on Pioneer Square. One of them was for programming where we would have conversations and experimental performances. One was a lounge where people could meet. And one was an engagement dome, where we had 50 designers in residence cycling through the dome throughout the week and illustrating the conversations that were happening both on our social channels and in person on the square. What we did was we populated the square with colorful flags that illustrated all those conversations, and then we upcycled those flags into the bags that you have before you right now. So a lot had changed between 2014, when we did that engagement, and 2016 in the city. And when we sat down to think through what we would do as our public engagement this year, we felt like we couldn't really avoid the changing zeitgeist in the city. That everywhere we turned, we felt like we were hearing conversations with hand-wringing about the future of the city and where is everything going. And though we could only do this in a small way, we felt like we wanted to have a conversation with the public about all the issues facing the city, the things that you guys are on the front lines doing every day. And we thought, what would happen if we tried to make it more of a design engagement, to give an open invitation for people to participate in the conversation around the core issues facing the city. So what we did was we structured the invitation to participate around 5 issues: education, transportation, housing, equity, and education. The participants would walk into the geodesic dome and they would see a board with one of these issues at the top of each. And they would pick a tag from the board that they felt strongly about. So if they wanted to say something about housing, they would pick one of those tags. If they wanted to say something about transportation, they would pick one of those tags. And each tag, as you can see before you, had both a vision statement and a pledge on it. And we structured the language specifically to encourage constructive feedback. We wanted people to say what they wanted to see more of, and then what they personally would do to help reach that vision. Now, after completing the tag, participants would record their tags in some custom hardware that one of our resident geniuses, Thomas Wester, built, who's here today. And it would photograph both sides of it so that we could have visibility to all of the responses that were coming through. And then they would place their tag on a post. We scattered posts around the geodesic domes that represented the neighborhoods of Portland. We were only actually able to build 45 of them because of our limited budget. So we got about half of the neighborhoods of Portland represented on the square, and we asked people to put the feedback that they had onto the posts of a neighborhood that they cared about. We also had an online forum to collect responses from folks who couldn't get down to headquarters. And so here's what we heard. We got 700 responses. That was over the course of 4 days, 8 hours a day. And the way that it broke down was that 40% of people weighed in on housing. 22% of people weighed in on transportation. And the rest of the folks weighed in on the other 3 issues, so they were trailing by a fairly large margin. The housing responses tended to be concentrated pretty close in neighborhoods, and unsurprisingly, transportation concentrated further out in the neighborhoods. Responses ranged from folks who wanted high-speed trains to the coast, Vancouver, and California, to housing localization and expansion dispersed throughout Portland, to education that embraced visual learning styles. Some people had unconventional suggestions, like housing that hangs from cables strung over the river. Many people pledged to get involved. 20% of the respondents used the words vote, help, advocate, or volunteer in their answer. But more than anything else, what we heard was that people were concerned about affordable housing. 127 responses had the word affordable in the language, 19% of overall responses then, and that accounts for more than 40% of the housing responses. Another word that figured heavily was homeless or homelessness, which consisted of 7% of responses and 19% of housing. So what we did was we tried to identify patterns within each of the issues. So we ran a sentiment analysis of all of the entries for both sides of each card. We figured that if people were more positive in their pledge than they were in stating the problem, that they were feeling hopeful or that they were feeling like they could do something. And if their pledge was more negative than the problem that they stated, then it might suggest a feeling of powerlessness. So after running the analysis, what we saw was there was an average score on housing and on employment that was much lower for the pledge. These were the issues that people were having a harder time thinking about solutions for. So, you know, your job is not easy, clearly. So some folks did have constructive feedback about those topics. It's not that they were all negative. For housing, folks would suggest things like zoning to encourage development that supported affordable housing or vouchers to subsidize low-income households. But often there was anger and disappointment in these particular issue answers. Some people even just left question marks as their pledge. But it might interest you to know that there were only 6 frowny faces as emoticons, whereas there were 25 smiley faces. So that's evidence that Portland is still a nice place. So the topics that had more positive pledges were education, equity, and transportation. Bike, the word bike, appeared 41 times, which accounts for a quarter of transportation. People even provided helpful diagrams for technical turning lanes that they would like to see in the city. And they also talked a lot about wanting to see safe bike lanes from particular neighborhoods that were further out. There was also a sense of personal empowerment in some of the education responses. For example, one card said, "We need more equity in women and minorities in STEM." And so the pledge was, "So I will share stories of lesser-known scientists with my students." So it's a sense of ability to do something. So I just want to leave you with one thought that seemed to summarize a lot of the overall sentiment that we collected, and that was a comment that we got on one of the equity cards, and that is this. Portland is growing fast, and we need to ensure through all levels of institution to give access to all. So we know that the council is in the midst of finalizing the comprehensive plan. You have a lot of different ways that you engage with the public that certainly has further reach than Design Week Portland. We only hope that sharing these results would add a bit of texture to what you hear already. And we did have quite a few folks from city bureaus take an interest in our installation downtown, which we were very excited about. And so where do we go from here? Well, if anything that you heard here today or your interest generally in our installation sort of gives you a sense of excitement, we want this to be the beginning of an open call for closer collaboration with the design community. We are very well organized. There are a lot of people in the design community with specialized skills that care about this city. And through our various efforts at engaging more closely with bureaus and with the public, we would like to have more of an impact on the city and be part of the solution. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share this with you.
Great report.
And we look forward to collaborating.
Great. Thank you both very much. Questions, comments? Yes, you're here.
Do you have any information about the demographics of the people who participated?
We don't. We have a good sense of the demographics of folks who attend our festival, but we tried to keep the bar of entry for participation pretty low on the square so that people would participate, so we didn't actually do a lot of exit interviews.
And what outcomes do you expect with, and what will you be doing with all this input?
Well, so we have all the data collected, and we did have some interaction with several bureaus, PBOT, and a couple of the folks who are doing affordable housing stuff in East Side stopped by, and we are happy to share data with anyone who wants it. We're going to put out a report that sort of collects all of the highest level takeaways and gives some of the examples that give it a little bit of texture. But honestly, we want to join forces with anyone who's interested.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to hear that there's going to be a written report. That was the one thing that could have been helpful to me, be able to read about it ahead of time as well. So once that's done, Mayor, I'm sure you'll be putting on the website. So thank you very much for a very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple thoughts. First, thank you for what you do with Design Week. I know that you get very little sort of support from local government, and it's very much a DIY event, and it's now grown probably well beyond what you originally imagined. And it's become one of our signature festivals. And one of the ideas that the mayor's had that I really appreciate is formalizing the way the city interacts with everybody that does big events. And we just concluded a tough budget cycle where the dollars were scarce at the end, but I still think the concept of a special office that interacts with all the festivals and events and figures out how we help, or maybe as Chad might say, how we get out of the way, is important. So that's something that I want to see the conversation continue. Second, I just want to apologize about our technology. It's anomalous to me that we have like almost a hearing a week on wanting to be an advanced technology center city. We're talking to Google Fiber, we're doing all these things, and yet, frankly, we had a big technology upgrade at City Hall, and now, of course, nothing works. So I apologize for that because of PowerPoint, but I would say, if you would send us the PowerPoint.
I do, please.
We'll all look at it, and again, apologies. And then finally, just a comment about people's comments and affordability. Years ago, I read a book called What Do Unions Do? And it was a book that an economist and a scholar and a labor person, others were trying to make sense of the fact that when they did some polling, they kept finding that people who were represented generally had a more negative view of the workplace than non-represented people. And it seemed anomalous because having union protection, civil service protection, whatever you would think would have a positive impact on your view. What they learned was the more secure people felt in the workplace, the more confident they were expressing their grievances or their criticisms. And that people that don't feel power often feel like their voice is silenced and then no one's listening. So it was an interesting, it sort of turned everything on its head for me, but we are changing as a city. We're going through a lot of growth. People are anxious. And I fear along the way that people, as they become increasingly unclear about how to communicate their views, they're getting lessons from the national scene, which I don't think are helpful lessons, where we tend to yell and scream before we actually engage. And we spend a lot of time in the community as part of our day-to-day job responsibilities, and I'm always struck by the different temperature when you actually meet people in their backyards and engage them. People love the city, they're concerned, they feel like there's growing pains, but the conversation is almost always respectful. But social media is not so helpful because when comments become anonymous, people tend to take on a different persona. And I think sometimes people feel they have to jazz it up to be heard. And I hope that's not the case. I hope we're all listening and that the respectful dialogue can still happen. And the final thing I want to say is that I'm very worried about pricing young creatives out of our city. And I was at a City Club forum on this recently, and I'm absolutely convinced we have to bring the coalition of arts advocates and design professionals and all the people who think about Portland as a creative hub back together, and we have to have a strategy for how cities affordable for creative people and millennials in particular, and for organizations, nonprofit arts organizations, performance organizations, and small businesses. And I hope that's something we can get an agreement on to have PDC and RAC begin to do an analysis. And I think it starts with doing a cultural inventory, but it also, and looking at other cities, because the redevelopment agencies of cities like Boston and Seattle have been the forefront of thinking about this. But I think we have to, our primary focus, morally and otherwise, is on street homelessness and people in crisis. We all understand that. And that's why the mayor's proposed a record budget in terms of investment. But we cannot, at the same time, risk losing what makes Portland special as a place that draws creative people that want to chase a dream. And right now, the affordability issue now impacts everybody. And I think we have to look at how we keep creative, particularly young creative people in our city. And that's going to require some new thinking about space and investment. And I hope we can launch that this fall. It's something I would like to take a leadership role in. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to comment on this report? Then let's take a vote, please, to accept it.
Motion is accepted.
Motion to
So
accept.
moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Fish.
I gave my comments earlier, so thank you.
Fritz.
Thank you. I look forward to the written report. Aye.
Hales.
There's that famous line in Casablanca where they say, round up the usual suspects. That's not what you did. You rounded up some different people, the usual suspects, and that's great. And both the creative force and spirit that you have tapped into with the design community in our city, and having all of those creative people learn from one another, and then having us as policymakers learn from them about how they see the city is really important discussion. So thank you for doing this. I echo Commissioner Fish's comments about we got to keep creative people here, and that's both a strategy and a price problem. But we appreciate your focus on the issue, and thank you for your leadership in putting this great thing for Portland together. Aye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. And next time, yeah, let's hear it for Design Week. Next time, we might have a working laptop here, which we don't, by the way. So if anyone else has a PowerPoint today, we're going to have to disappoint you as well because it's just not working. Okay, let's move on to 589, please.
589, adopt administrative rules for Chapter 23.10, removing barriers to employment, and authorize the city attorney to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the Bureau of Labor and Industry not to exceed $25,000.
Okay, our Ban the Box team is here. We can't take action on this today, but we can adopt amendments today, and there are amendments before us. We've already had our hearing, so I will move the amendments that are in front of us as a memorandum. If there's a second.
Second.
And then turn it over to our team here, to Judy Prosper and Rachel Wiggins, to tell us about these amendments, and then we can take action on them if that's the will of the council.
Good morning, council members. Mayor Hales, I'm Judy Prosper, Deputy City Attorney.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. But you've been here for a while.
And we're still about halfway through our agenda, so we'll see you at dinner.
So,
Good afternoon. Okay, so there's just a few changes to this ever-evolving. We've actually received some comment in the last few days. I think the mayor received a letter. We're not going to stop listening to comment, even though the comment period is over. So the first thing is what was discussed last week. We are adding sort of a clause to there was a discussion about the $5,000 fine. So in trying to come up with a way that's both a hammer, as the mayor talked about the last time, and not too light, as Commissioner Novick, who's not here, but we keep channeling, speaks of, we crafted what we thought was a compromise. So usually the AG can bring what's called a pattern and practice case before BOLI. And how we've crafted it is we've given ourselves, the city of Portland, the authority to bring a pattern and practice case. That was already the case in the drafted contract. But only if the city brings a pattern and practice case would the additional up to $5,000 fine be on the table. So that's a compromise we crafted, and we hope that you'll accept.
So that one says if the city brings an action against an employee who has demonstrated a pattern and practice of violating the ordinance. I didn't understand that in the amendment, that we would find that before. Why wouldn't BOLI be finding that?
Well, we would only bring a case. The city of Portland would only bring a case if we had complaints brought to us that established a pattern and practice, not just one complainant who would bring their individual case, but if we were aware that a particular employer had a pattern and practice
But
of doing.
the complaints are going to BOLI, and BOLI is going to determine whether or not a complaint is valid. So why would the city be in the middle of that, and who would do that?
Yes, ma'am. So under 659A, there's a clause where the Attorney General may bring a pattern and practice case, as we did, and I can't speak to sick leave because I was actually not even here
Another
then.
example would be fair housing.
Thank you.
In our fair housing work, the U.S. Attorney and the Attorney General are in a position where they can bring a pattern and practice.
So my confusion or my concern isn't that to have that language, which I looked at yesterday and thought that was fine. It's that the city would make that finding rather than the BOLI would make that finding?
Well, it's not making a finding. The findings are happening at BOLI. We would bring the case. We would stand in the shoes of a petitioner and bring the case before BOLI because we were aware of an employer who engaged in a pattern and practice of violation.
But we're contracting with BOLI to look into the complaints. This is like sick leave, and indeed we had language like that in sick leave about the pattern and practice. So why is it the city, how are we even involved in looking at the concerns? Aren't we just sending them straight to BOLI?
We can. I mean, there are three ways that cases can come before BOLI under our scheme. The first is a petitioner brings it directly to BOLI. The second is, as under 659A, one of the clauses allows the Attorney General of the state to, if the Attorney General becomes aware of a pattern in practice, to stand in the place of a petitioner and as the state bring a case to BOLI. So just be the petitioner. We are giving ourselves the option, if the city became aware, and I'll give you a scenario where I think this might come up. If one of the advocates came to us, the city, they would have no standing if an organization, let's give an example like the Urban League, was aware of a pattern in practice. That organization would have no standing to bring a case, but they could give the city that information, and the city could step into the shoes of a petitioner and bring a pattern in practice case. So on behalf of more than one petitioner is the only way this would happen.
Can I offer a perspective on this? We cannot compel the Bureau of Labor Industries to bring a pattern practice case. We can't compel the Attorney General to bring such a case, or the U.S. Attorney. The reason I like this compromise, and I think Judy was like acting as Secretary of State the last week or so, going back and forth on it. The reason I like this is that in a case where we believe there's egregious, repeated action, we are saying the city has the option to act as a Attorney General, which I think is appropriate. That doesn't mean we bring the case. We could have a law firm bring the case. We could partner with the Attorney General's office. We could do whatever we want, but we are in the driver's seat. If we are successful in that case, because again, we can't compel BOLI or the AG to bring this case, we collect attorney fees, and this gives us a civil remedy. And I think this is rather creative, because for me, it's premature, I think, to change the regulatory system that was set up under state law in terms of BOLI's enforcement. If it turns out there's a lot more bad actors than we thought, we can come back and give them more authority than the current law provides. But to give us the option of being essentially an Attorney General, seeking relief where we determine that there's a pattern in practice, go after a bad actor, have a bigger stick with a up to $5,000 civil penalty, and be able to collect our attorney fees, which the statute provides, I think is actually a creative compromise. And that's why I'm going to support it.
So does this mean that BOLI can't do that?
BOLI, well, I'm not the expert here, although I practice in the area. We can't tell BOLI to do that. We
No, but
cannot
does that
direct
mean that if BOLI finds that there's a pattern of practice of abuse, that they cannot do that unless the city
No, this
asks them to?
doesn't, this doesn't alter in any way BOLI's existing authority. This supplements the statute by giving us this opportunity. But I can tell you, having litigated a lot of these cases, we're contracting with BOLI to exercise its best judgment in how they administratively handle these cases. We can't tell them what cases to pursue and what remedies to pursue. So this is just a safety valve which gives us the option to bring such a case if we think there's a pattern in practice and we think a bigger stick is warranted.
But this is an amendment to 3.04.
Yes, to the administrative rules.
So this, in fact, is discounting Commissioner Novick's concern that the penalty under ORS blah, blah, blah is too low. It's saying that it takes out the BOLI commissioner's ability to assess a civil penalty of up to $5,000, and says that only if we say, or the Attorney General says, that there's a pattern of practice, can they assess the $5,000.
Let's be clear, it doesn't diminish existing law, so there's no discounting of anything.
It changes the proposal that was before us before.
Mine is in addition to the remedies provided under the statute.
And I believe this has been cleared with Steve's office.
The original $5,000, Commissioner Fritz, was in addition to all the BOLI penalties that can be assessed, and there are very many of those. For example, there's a civil penalty where the Attorney General brings a case of $1,000 for each violation. There's an amount not to exceed $11,000 under another circumstance. So there are penalties already,
I'm concerned that this puts us in the middle of adjudicating whether or not an employer has demonstrated a pattern or practice of violating the ordinance, because the ordinance says that BOLI is going to be responsible for figuring that out. So how would we even take that complaint?
BOLI is the adjudicator, we would be a party. So they would ultimately make the decision as to whether there was a pattern in practice. But we would, as I said, I use the Urban League example, where the Urban League could not, if they were aware, nor could they force, as Commissioner Fish said, the Attorney General to bring a pattern in practice case. But if they came to us, to the City Attorney's Office, and said, we have this evidence of a pattern in practice, this amendment gives us the option to stand in the shoes of a petitioner and bring a case, and gives the $5,000 penalty.
I don't have a problem with that piece. What I have an issue with here is BOLI's ability to make and responsibility under the contract to look into, is there a pattern or practice of abuse? We want petitioners to be going to BOLI, not to the city attorney's office. That decision was made by the council that we don't want the city attorney enforcing this ordinance, that BOLI is going to do that. So it seems to me that this takes away from BOLI's ability to.
Commissioner Fritz, this has absolutely no bearing on BOLI's authority.
All right.
There's no change in the existing statute.
Tell BOLI what to do or not do.
It doesn't add to or subtract from their statutory authority, which is a creature of state law, and our contract is just asking them to handle the complaint process. The reason I think this is a plus is that it gives us the option, doesn't require us, we're not, and I share your concerns about having the city attorney's office become a mini BOLI. It gives us the option where there's a serious and repeated level of bad action to be in the position of the attorney general. It allows us in that role to partner with the attorney general and to go forward. It allows us to partner with BOLI, but it gives us the right to make that judgment. That's all it does. It doesn't require us. It gives us the option, and I think that is worthy.
With all due respect, it does take away from BOLI because it changes what we just said. But I'm going from the perspective of somebody who has implemented the sick time law and worked with BOLI, and that if you believe this is better, then I will defer to your judgment.
If I can maybe try to help clarify, we would, in the very much earlier iteration of this, it was the city attorney who would be adjudicating and deciding on whether or not a violation took place. Here, we would not be doing that. We don't have the authority to do that. This would be us becoming a party and bringing that.
So how would we know that?
An advocacy group would come to us. They could go to the Attorney General and be turned down, for example. Let's say an advocacy group that we partnered with to help write this law said, we have our clients who we believe are being discriminated. We think that this particular employer is conducting a pattern and practice of discrimination. This empowers the city attorney to do some preliminary investigation and bring the case to BOLI. BOLI would determine everything from whether or not there was sufficient evidence. They would go through their whole process.
When does BOLI decide whether there's a pattern and practice of abuse?
BOLI would have to decide. They always will decide. Usually there'll be one petitioner at a time, and they'll decide on an individual basis. If they find that there's a pattern in practice, they can levy higher fines or do whatever they wish.
Where does it say that? Without us asking them to?
Without us asking them to. So throughout 659A, beginning with 820 to 865, it goes through the whole complaint process. So 820 talks about who can bring a complaint, any person claiming to be aggrieved. But it does not allow for sort of this pattern and practice. That's where the statute gives in 825 the Attorney General the authority to do so. So BOLI is not in the business of pattern and practice. The Attorney General would step in if there was a pattern and practice.
Can I give you another example?
Please.
The city has been doing fair housing testing. Armed with the results of our tests, we have the option currently to go to the U.S. Attorney, the Attorney General, or BOLI and say, we want you to bring up a big lawsuit under this. They have the right to say, not interested. This doesn't take away, add, or subtract. It just allows the city, if there's an egregious circumstance, to be a party. And I see no harm in giving us that option because it doesn't come at the expense of anyone else's jurisdiction. And that's a fact. We can argue it back and forth, but it's a fact.
Does BOLI have the authority to do a pattern and practice?
BOLI does not have the authority. The Attorney General has the authority to be the party who brings a pattern and practice case. We would be an additional entity that could bring a pattern and practice case under this amendment.
Ben's going to try to,
If I might, this seems to fill a gap. And I'm sorry, I kept coming up there. Why don't I step over because I'm getting reverb on the mic here. When I was trying to talk before, I turned my mic on, and that's what caused the audio squeal.
Okay, but we did see your PowerPoint.
It's here, I promise. Ben Walters, City Attorney's Office. So what this amendment does is fill a gap in that under the, as has been described, BOLI itself does not have a pattern and practice authority. That's given to the AG under the statute. Our intergovernmental agreement is with BOLI. It's not with the AG's office. And so in order for there to be a pattern and practice enforcement of the of our ordinance, the AG would have to step in and say, we will take that on. They might not. They do tend to work off of a model where if they're doing work for an agency, they bill the agency. There is no mechanism within the IGA as it's currently established for us to pay for that.
With all due respect, I understand that. 3.041, before the amendment, says that the BOLI commissioner may assess a civil penalty of $5,000. Under the amendment, that will no longer be the case.
Unless the city of Portland was the petitioner.
Under this narrow circumstance, and that was to address Commissioner Novick's concern that this gave too much authority.
No, that was Commissioner Fish.
All right, sorry.
This is designed to balance Commissioner Novick's desire to have a bigger stick with mine to make sure that that we have a role in the discretionary process of deciding whether a bigger stick is necessary, absent any experience under this particular new law. And as I said, at some point in the future, if we're seeing rampant violations of the law, I think it's perfectly appropriate for the council to consider giving BOLI additional statutory remedies. But I don't think at this point it makes sense for us to change state law in terms of what are the remedies for violations of these kinds of ordinances.
all right, let's move on to the Second Amendment, which is the criminal history matrix and the concern that Commissioner Salzman had about attempts.
Yes, so we have also just a slight amendment to the criminal history matrix, which came through a comment that we were very happy to receive, to include, as we discussed last week, attempts, which brings down a felony to the lesser. So if it was an A felony, it brings it down to B. To also add criminal conspiracy and solicitation. Solicitation, like attempts, bring it down one level, so from A to a B. B to a C, and criminal conspiracy maintains the crime at the current felony level that it is. So we wanted to add those to be clear that, for example, in a category B, I'll choose aggravated theft 1, ORS 164.057. The solicitation of that would also be a crime that you could use the matrix for, and the solicitation or attempt of that would also be a crime that you could use the matrix to eliminate a candidate.
Do you recommend those changes?
I do recommend the changes. And just to be clear, category C is not affected because if a category C, and I can't remember the last, so if it's a D felony and it would be reduced to a misdemeanor under an attempt or solicitation, that might go against the very policy we're trying to establish here, bringing down drug crimes to the misdemeanor level.
All right, other questions? Thank you both, unless Rachel, you want something to add?
Just one for the group. Procedurally, there is a need for an emergency clause on this item. Unfortunately, because it needs to be carried over next week, we run the risk of having an ordinance in effect that has administrative laws that are not. So I don't know if that's something to be added now or next week, but that is something
We
for
have a full
council.
council next week?
We have four people.
We have 4 people next week.
We can't add an emergency clause without 4.
Right, I think we can't do that till next week.
I just wanted to make people aware.
I'd be happy to support emergency clause next week.
We'll remind you.
All right. Now,
Thank you.
I don't believe we have to take testimony on the amendments, but I'll offer that opportunity just in case. Does anyone want to speak on these amendments, just on the amendments?
Thank you.
Nice work, Judy.
If not, then let's take a vote, please, to adopt the amendments, and then it will come back next week on regular calendar, and the emergency ordinance could be, emergency clause could be added if that's what council chooses. So roll call on the amendments, please.
I want to thank staff for the work they did engaging council in really these technical finish line considerations. And I think you came up, Judy, with an elegant compromise solution, and thank you. Aye.
I would have preferred to have given Bowley more authority and more ability to impose significant penalties. However, in order for this amendment to pass, it has to have 3 votes, so I vote aye.
I want to thank Commissioner Fish and all of my colleagues, even the ones that aren't here, who suggested improvements to this ordinance. And I want to thank you, Judy and Rachel, for your continued stewardship of this very good thing that Portland is doing. Aye. Okay, let's move on, please, to item number 590, which is a second reading vote.
Revised solid waste and recycling rates and fees for franchise residential collection and commercial permit tonnage fees effective July 1, 2016.
Roll call, please.
Fish.
Aye.
Fritz.
Remind everybody that we are decreasing garbage rates. Aye.
Hales.
And that with a very modest increase in the commercial tipping fee, we're going to be putting trash cans in business districts all over the city. Aye. 591.
Amend contract with City Central Concern to increase the not-to-exceed amount by $572,137 and extend the expiration date until October 31, 2016, to provide additional treatment readiness services, transitional housing, and follow-up retention support services to chemically dependent homeless adult chronic arrestees.
Commander Westbrook and Ms. Roshan are here to tell us about this program. If you ever get the chance to do what I got to do last week and watch a graduation of the service coordination team, which I think you probably have, it's a reaffirmation that progress is possible. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to be there. Appreciate it.
So tell us about this.
Well, I'm Sarah Westbrook, the commander at Central Precinct, and this is Emily Rushan, our coordinator of service coordination team. We're here simply to ask for an extension of the current contract that we have, 15-16 contract, so that it's taking longer than we thought it would to change from the regular contract to the RFP process. We're almost ready to get that RFP out there into the public, but we're worried we're going to run out of our current contract.
Does this amendment change the scope of the work or just continue the status quo?
Continues status quo.
And we had a robust discussion the last time you were with us about the contracting process. Are we on track as the council, I think, expressed its intent to do a RFP or whatever the technical process you're using to design to give everybody a fair shot at applying for this work?
Yes, we are.
And there's nothing in the contracting process that is being developed which gives a preference to any particular provider, including the incumbent?
No, there's not. That's one of the reasons we're working so hard to work on the language.
Thank you.
Good. Further questions? Anything else you want to add, Emily, please?
We're also doing a pre-submittal conference as well, so anyone who may be interested in the RFP process can come in and ask any questions. So we're hoping to open that up I'll be doing a presentation, kind of overall scope of the work that we do and the participants that we serve. So then there's a kind of a greater understanding for the RFP process and what we're looking for.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you for your work on this. I just want to comment that I believe this is part of the intent of the mayor's concern for a diversion program, except not with people who've been arrested, but rather for people who are just living outside, but who do need chronically treatment for being chemically dependent. And so this is a great model. In a few weeks, I'm going to be bringing an ordinance to the council referring a marijuana tax on the sales of recreational marijuana to council, and this is an example of the program that we could expand if we had more funding for it, and which has been proven to be successful. And you're right, Mayor, that the personal testimonies of the lives saved and the productive citizens returning to becoming taxpayers and employees is very, very rewarding. So thank you for all of your work.
Thank you for your support.
Both. Anyone want to speak on this item? Okay, we'll take testimony. Come on up. Thank you both.
Shedrick, do you have something on this?
On the service coordination team
Yes, he
itself?
signed up.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
I was homeless 5 years ago and I found out these services are necessary and need to be funded for a comfortable Portland. Chemical dependence to me is also cigarettes. When homeless people come up to me, I was homeless, and ask me for money, I don't give them any money because maybe they're going to go out and buy cigarettes. And I like to refer people to the Bud Clark Commons. That changed my life 5 years ago, and it got me coordinated there. So I also like to say sometimes, just like sometimes people think the commissioners here and the mayor are heartless, I'm heartless with homeless people. I don't know what their agenda is if I give them money. You know, they go out and buy a fifth and just lay on the sidewalk. Generally, I don't know any social programs where they hand out alcohol and cigarettes. So that's just my point of view, that we need these things. It was useful, very useful for me. I had plans to go to LA and just where it's warm or something. I have a rule sometimes I'd rather starve to death than freeze to death. And this area is agriculturally blessed. I mean, we have a lot of food, low population. And so that's why I'm glad I stayed in Oregon. But I'm just saying, I just can't go around giving people money. And I like to be able to, I say, go to the Bud Clark Commons, it's near the bus station. And then that's it. I don't feel guilty about that because I don't know what they're gonna do with the money if I gave them some.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, this will be continued to next week because we have to have 4 people here to vote for it. But I just want to say, I won't be here then, but you know, this program is expensive, but worth it. That it is very expensive to keep arresting people over and over again for committing crimes. And we do that as a society, and it is expensive to get people into recovery and get them back into society. And actually, of course, it's much less expensive to do this. And not to mention the human difference in cost for both all the parties to those criminal violations and to those lost opportunities and to that lost productivity. So this program is just a huge success. It gets demonstrated every time we see a graduation. I'm still walking about 6 inches off the floor just from seeing what you've accomplished with that group of people. So keep up the good work, and this will be back next week for a vote. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to 592.
592, accept guaranteed maximum price of $4,901,284 from R&R General Contractors, Inc. for the construction of the Gateway Park project.
What a good idea, Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very pleased to have this item today. Thank you for your patience waiting. Gateway Discovery Park was named after a robust naming process with community engagement. It will serve 800 new households that currently do not have ready access to parks or natural areas. As a reminder, only 2 out of 5 residents in East Portland can walk to a park within a half mile, compared with other parts of Portland where 4 out of 5 residents have that access. We recently broke ground on the project site, and this contract will help transform the site, and I'm hoping the entire Gateway Regional Center. There's a slight twist to this presentation that we are also going to talk a little bit more than usual about the operations and maintenance needs. But first, I'd like to introduce Christine Moody, who's going to talk about the contract.
Thank you, Commissioner, Mayor, Commissioner Fish. Christine Moody with Procurement Services. In October of 2014, City Council authorized the use of a construction manager general contractor solicitation process for the construction of the Gateway Park project. Through this process, a request for proposals was issued. Among other things, this RFP included specific preference points for a prime contractor who is certified as a disadvantaged minority, women, or emerging small business, and included a community benefits plan that focuses on minority and women workforce and subcontracting and East Portland hiring. 5 responses to this RFP were received. The responses were evaluated by an 8-person selection committee, which included representatives from Portland Parks, Portland Development Commission, Rose Community Development, and 2 minority evaluators. R&R General Contractors was the highest scoring proposal and is a certified DBE MBE business. Working with the city, R&R General Contractors has committed to a 25% DMWESB subcontracting goal and a 25% goal for East Portland residents and businesses on this project. R&R will comply with the city's 20% apprenticeship requirement and PDC's minority women workforce goals, 14% women and 29.5% for people of color. You now have before you the procurement report recommending a contract award for a guaranteed maximum price of $4,901,284.40. At this point, I'll turn this over to Eileen Argentina from Portland Parks to discuss the project and the ongoing support needed.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz, and good morning, Mayor and Commissioner Fish. George Lazovoy is here also to answer any questions about the project himself. And this is an updated copy of the memo that was sent out yesterday, along with some graphics that we have in lieu of a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
I'm pleased to be, Eileen Argentina, Portland Parks and Recreation. I'm pleased to be here today to talk about the community's and Portland Parks and Recreation's vision for Gateway Discovery Park and Plaza as you take action to authorize its construction. I want to share with you the background and context for our expected operations and maintenance budget for this exciting new space. Gateway Discovery Park and Plaza is planned on 3.2 vacant acres at the corner of Northeast Halsey Street and Northeast 106th Avenue. Development of this park will close the gap in a park-deficient area within East Portland for the neighborhoods of Hazelwood, Mill Park, and Woodland Park. Design of the Gateway Discovery Park and Plaza has progressed with extensive public outreach in 2015, including 5 project advisory committee meetings and 2 open house community events. This design process with the community was built upon a master plan that was passed by the council in 2011. Additionally, we work closely with our project partners, Harper's Playground, Inc. and Portland Development Commission, to make sure our design achieves the full goals of inclusivity and becoming the development catalyst for which we are striving. We're very grateful for their partnership. What we found through our outreach is that tremendous interest exists in East Portland to provide arts, culture, and wellness-related programs that will draw crowds and build communities. Gateway Discovery Park will be a key opportunity to fulfill that vision. The preliminary estimate for operations and maintenance resulted in $270,000 being allocated to PP&R's budget as of fiscal 16-17. At that time, the planning around community and recreational programming for the plaza was not included. These programming costs will be included in the Portland Parks and Recreation requested budget for fiscal year 17-18. Gateway Discovery Park and Plaza will need to be staffed and activated in order to be an amenity worthy of being called East Portland's living room. The park is intended to serve as a catalyst for commercial development and promote revitalization of the Gateway Regional Center. PDC owns an adjacent 1-acre piece of property that is slated for redevelopment with a mix of uses that will build on the success of the park and help activate the plaza. PDC is supporting the park's development with $1 million in urban renewal funds. Envisioned as the community gathering center for the East Portland community, the master plan design provides a programmable plaza for events and higher intensity visitation comparable to urban plazas such as Pioneer Courthouse Square, Director Park, O'Brien Square, Holiday Park. The plaza features a 21,000 square foot multi-use hardscape plaza accentuated by a distinctive rack art piece, along with a unique canopy shade structure with kiosks, storage space, and restrooms to support regular visitation and programmed community events. Additional park features include a water play feature, a lawn gathering space with seat walls for performances, skate dot, picnic area, and outdoor fitness equipment. The Gateway Discovery Park has long been envisioned as a linchpin for the city's goal of Gateway as a regional center. The plaza is expected to be an accessible, attractive, and safe community gathering space on a daily basis, as well as a venue for programs, events, and activities that reflect the diversity of East Portland. Our experience has shown that maintaining a continuous presence with on-site staff will preempt negative uses from becoming established. In addition, the staff presence will greatly enhance community relationship building and opportunities for collaboration. Partners are ready, willing, and able to join us with us in creating fun and culturally responsive programs for residents and visitors in East Portland. The investment of Parks SDCs and urban renewal funds is an important practical and symbolic investment in East Portland. However, we know that it takes more than good park design and construction to ensure that parks become a community and neighborhood asset. Parks must be operated and maintained in a way that promotes beneficial use. For parks that function as public squares, as this one certainly will, the most cost-effective way to ensure those benefits is to invest in activation. Numerous examples exist in our city and in most cities. Pioneer Courthouse Square is one of our most visible examples of a public square that continuously delivers active civic engagement and community building. A block and a half away, Director Park demonstrates that same principle on a smaller scale. Holiday Park is in the process of being reclaimed for the community thanks to the innovative Holiday Park Partnership that, for the third consecutive year, is supporting robust programming all summer. However, examples such as O'Brien Square and Ankeny Plaza demonstrate how challenging it can be to prevent negative uses from becoming entrenched. The factors that threaten our shared public space make it all the more important to be proactive from the start. Our goal with Gateway Discovery Park is to establish clear and consistent community norms about how this shared public space is to be used. With Council's investment, Gateway Discovery Park will have fantastic infrastructure that will lend itself to showcasing and supporting the vitality, diversity, and strength of East Portland. PPNR, PDC, community partners, and stakeholders believe that an active and sustained program at the park year-round will be a wise investment in the district and in the community. The urban park model is estimated to require $298,000 annually for programming. This includes overhead of $29,000. The estimate reflects $60,000 in program expenses such as concerts, movies, cultural events, other performances, farm-to-market events, etc., $40,000 in materials and supplies, and $150,000 in staffing. This is comparable to Director Park, but takes into account the larger overall site and the expense of providing programs and activities in a location where performers and other organizations are less likely to participate at no or very low costs. What's being proposed reflects the relatively unique circumstance where we are creating the foundation for important urban development in the coming decades. In light of that, these additional resources will be required so we can claim this space for the community from day one. PPNR's recent reorganization resulted in, among other things, the creation of an arts, culture, and special events department. This department will bring together Multnomah Arts Center, Community Music Center, Summer Free-for-All, and our Urban Parks programming groups to develop programs and partnerships in collaboration with the community. Gateway Discovery Park will be an outstanding example of the power of parks to transform neighborhoods and contribute to the development of civic capacity. It will represent the commitment to equity that the Council has demonstrated through its investments and resource allocation, and PPNR will be proud to help deliver on that vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Two questions. First of all, as the commissioner in charge that helped to deliver Director Park, and I remember some of the criticism at the time that we were making those additional investments, I'm very pleased to see the Bureau embracing that model and in effect saying that what's good for downtown is good for the central part of our county in another urban area. So I appreciate that very much. I'm reminded that in the past, when we've brought O&M requests, and I'll give you the example, when the Parks Bureau proposed funding for O&M for the expanded community gardens, we did it through the budget process, and the Independent Budget Office came back and said, it's a good idea, but we think you can do it for less, and then we negotiated a figure. Do we have the benefit of a third-party review of these numbers on O&M so we know whether this is the right number?
We don't at this point, but it'll come back through the budget process. It'll be part of our budget request, and
So that will still happen?
yes.
We'll still have the Independent Budget Office saying, good idea, but you can do it for $1 less or
Correct.
whatever.
Correct.
Yes, Commissioner, and that's, I wanted to lay the groundwork so it's not a surprise when it comes back in the budget process, but just to give you my expectation that this is going to be East Portland's living room, building on the success of Director Park.
Of course, as long as I continue not to have general fund supported bureaus, I'll be an enthusiastic supporter. One other question, though, because and thank you for having backup documents, because it's helpful to see it. And I remember the process that led to the master planning for this, and it's a beautiful park, and it needs to be a signature park. Question I have for you, and I don't want you to get, I'm not asking you this so you get sideways with PDC, but we're asking the general fund to cover the cost of this additional O&M, but the Portland Development Commission has a parcel which is to be developed, and and whoever occupies that space is gonna be a beneficiary of this park. Should we be asking PDC to put any money on the table for O&M?
Well, their O&M money would have to be general fund, because you can't spend tax increment on O&M, so would be robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's still general fund.
But we actually have a work session coming up for the council later this month on that very question as far as the partnership between PDC, the Housing
And
Bureau.
Charlie, I get your point, but what we've done in the past is but understanding the color of money, we've been creative about some money coming out of one pocket and going to another and capitalizing certain things. And this is one where I feel like PDC should be part of the conversation.
Absolutely, I agree.
But if we're going to allocate additional O&M money, it's going to still be general fund one way or another.
It's going to come back to the police bureau where we have to take it, so from, you know.
All right. Further questions or comments?
Did you have others, Commissioner?
No, again, I remember the criticisms when we did a similar model with Director Park. I think in retrospect, the additional money ensured that we programmed an active urban space and made it welcoming for everybody, and I think it was part of the success story. And I think what's good for Director Park, given its geography, is also good for Gateway, and the people of Gateway deserve to have just as successful and activated public space. So I support the concept, and I look forward to seeing what the budget office thinks about the numbers, which I would never accuse Director Abate of inflating any numbers on O&M, because I used to do all the inflating when I was a commissioner. I never let him do it, but certainly.
All right, thank you both. Anyone want to speak on this item? Then is there a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Thank you for your good work, and Eileen, you have consistently been one of the wonderful people at the Parks Bureau, and it's nice to have you come before us and present. Thank you. Aye.
Fritz.
Colleagues, thank you for your indulgence into the early afternoon in having this important discussion. It is, I think, especially important when we're planning a space that will need programming to be very clear up front that that is the intent and that we'll be having further discussions in the budget. Thank you to Mike Abate and Eileen Argentina, as well as Christine Moody, for the contract work as well as for the planning work that this contract was held as a model by members of the minority community last week when we were discussing the wider community benefits agreements and plans. And so I'm very proud of Portland Park's work on this. Aye.
Hales.
Well, I'm very pleased that you have called the question or pushed the question of what should we spend to properly program public space. And I challenged Mike Abate a while ago on this subject of, okay, we have a Parks Bureau, we have a Transportation Bureau, who's the Bureau of Public Spaces? And Mike said, pick me, or words to that effect. But somebody in city government needs to be responsible for civic spaces, not just green spaces. And I'm perfectly content to have that be the Parks Bureau. And in fact, appreciate the fact that you're stepping up on this. It's just that we do need to say who, and I'm glad that we are. Aye.
Mayor, since Christine Moody's here and the Water Bureau's here, could we do
Let's that.
576?
Let's do 576, which is one of the items that we can act on from our consent calendar this morning. 576, please.
Authorize participating agreement with Arjurio Software Technologies, Inc. for the purchase of capital project management software for a not-to-exceed amount of $825,000.
Mayor, this agreement that's before us follows unanimous council approval on May 4th for the Portland Water Bureau to use the, quote, cooperative procurement method, end quote, with cost not to exceed $825,000. This item would authorize the agreement with Origo Software.
It's as good enough as mine.
Botched a lot of names today. It builds on a pilot program that improved efficiency, streamlined collaboration, and increased project transparency. I'll turn it over to Christine Moody.
Thank you. Please. I'm standing up because I have a cramp in my leg, so don't take it personally.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. Christine Moody, Procurement Services. The Water Bureau's Engineering Services Group manages 50 to 70 construction projects every year. Each construction project requires project management, budget, and resource management. The current software applications are not meeting the Bureau's business or technology needs. The goal of the project management software system project is to consolidate current business process management into a single hosted configurable software environment. As allowed for in City Code 5.33, the city may participate in a cooperative procurement after posting a public notice of the intent to use a cooperative contract. A notice was posted on May 9th, 2016, and no responses were received. You have before you a procurement report recommending the authorization of a cooperative contract with Arrigo Software Technologies for a not to exceed amount of $825,000.
Actually, I was just going to answer questions.
Who are you?
Teresa Elliott, Portland Water Bureau Chief Engineer.
Questions? Thank you both. Anyone want to speak on this item? Is there a motion to drop the report?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Fish.
Thank you both. Aye.
Thank you. Aye.
Hale.
Aye. Okay, let's go back to the regular calendar then and move to
293.
593. We can take testimony if there is any. Let's read the item.
593, amend master first lien sewer system bond ordinance and master second lien sewer system bond declaration to provide Bureau of Environmental Services greater operational flexibility and clarify provisions of the master documents.
Eric Johansson.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Eric Johansson, Debt Manager in the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services. This ordinance authorizes amendments to the city's first and second lien bond declarations for our sewer revenue bond program. The bond declarations are bond talk for that legal document that contains the city's legal covenants and other promises that we make to bondholders and provides bondholders with their rights. As a result of evolving market practices and changing accounting standards over the last several years, we've come to realize that our declarations have grown a little bit stale. Beginning a few years ago now, BES, debt management staff, and our outside bond attorneys began the process of obtaining consents from our existing bondholders to make a number of modifications to our bond declarations. After issuing the sewer revenue bonds last fall, the 2015s, we have now enough consents to make the changes that we've been looking to make. The changes are outlined in detail in the council packet. In particular, the changes have to do with the debt service reserve funding requirements, the timing of determining compliance with our rate covenants, as well as clarifying the definition of operating expenses to exclude certain non-cash items. We think these amendments will have positive long-term benefits to ratepayers by reducing the amounts we borrow for debt service reserve funds and minimizing overall Bureau revenue requirements. So with that, I'll happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much.
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment that I'm so grateful we have experienced debt managers like you who know all of these ins and outs and pay such great diligence. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We are fortunate, and that's why we have a AAA bond rating, because these guys know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Anyone want to speak on this item? If not, then it's carried over to next week because emergency ordinance, so it'll be acted on that. Thank you.
You can go to
Okay, and
595.
while we're talking about debt, let's do 594.
594, authorize a borrowing of not more than $34,476,000 in anticipation of the Fire and Police Disability and Retirement Fund levy for fiscal year 2016-17.
Not a trifling sum.
Again, for the record, Eric Johansson, Debt Manager, Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services. It does authorize the issuance of about $34.5 million in tax anticipation notes to fund the annual cash flow deficit in the Fire and Police Disability and Retirement Fund. As you may recall from past years, the city issues tax anticipation notes to fund the expenses of the fund prior to the receipt of property taxes in late November or early December. Because FPD&R cannot legally carry over sufficient fund balances to pay those early fiscal year expenses, it's necessary to issue tax anticipation notes to avoid a cash flow deficit. We expect that we're going to sell the tax anticipation notes in mid-July, and they will be repaid on or about June 30th of 2017.
Great, questions? Eric, thank you very much. This also will be carried over to next week. 595.
595, revise sewer and stormwater rates, charges, and fees in accordance with the fiscal year 2016-2017 sewer user rate study.
Roll call, please.
Fish.
Mayor and colleagues, I'm just going to make brief comments that apply to both 595 and 596, and we've all had a chance to comment in greater detail about the proposed rates. But I want to, again, do some thank yous. First, to the Citizens Utility Board of Oregon for their ongoing partnership with Portland's public utilities, and each year they identify further cost savings that allow us to reduce rates. Second, to the new Portland Utility Board for their thoughtful consideration of both bureaus' budgets. And we know that in their second year of full operation, we expect to get even more comments and more in-depth commentary from them in the next budget cycle. I want to thank our budget analysts, Ryan Kinsella, Claudio Campuzano, and Melissa Merrill. I want to thank the two Mikes, Mike Stewart and Mike Jordan, the directors of the two utilities and their dedicated teams at the Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services. For the third year in a row, we have been able to keep utility rate increases combined, that is, under 5%. This year, under 4.5%, or roughly $4 per month for the typical customer. This reflects our collective ongoing commitment to providing good value to our ratepayers and to investing in basic services like replacing old pipes and preparing for the big one. I am proud that our public utilities continue to invest in maintaining our system while exercising discipline with ratepayer dollars. Aye.
Fritz.
Commissioner Fish, thank you for your fiscal responsibility and your commitment to openness, transparency, and accountability in guiding the two utility bureaus these past 3.5 years. Aye.
Hale.
Thank you very much. Aye. Okay, 596.
96, increase the Portland Bureau of Transportation Procurement Authority for the bike share system.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
596.
Got it?
Yep.
Water Bureau. Authorize the rates and charges for water and water-related services during the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2016 to June 30, 2017, and fix an effective date.
Roll call, please.
Fish.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. 597.
Authorize a 1% dedicated fund account and authorize the chief procurement officer to conduct solicitations and execute agreements in support of the community benefits plan for the Washington Park Reservoirs Improvements Project not to exceed $1,145,500.
And as I've discussed with Commissioner Fish, I'm going to set this over for 1 week so we can answer some more questions. Thank you. Aye. 598.
Increase the Portland Bureau of Transportation's procurement authority for the bike share system.
Second reading.
Not to exceed 3.75 million.
There you go.
3.75 million, right. Second reading, roll call, please.
Fish.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hale.
Aye. 599.
Authorize Portland Bureau of Transportation to enter into agreements with non-city hosts for Biketown bike share stations.
Roll call, please.
Fish.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you to our major partner, Nike, and to the Portland Bureau of Transportation and Commissioner Novix and his staff. Aye.
Hills.
You're here. Aye. 600.
Amend fee schedules for tree permits.
Okay, Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. Jen Kyra, the city forester, will present on behalf of Portland Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz, Mayor, and Commissioner Fish. For the record, I'm Jen Cairo, the City Forester with Portland Parks and Recreation, and I'm here to propose to update the tree permit fee schedule for fiscal year 16-17, requesting council's approval for that. Portland Parks and Recreation services are primarily supported through general funds. However, we practice cost recovery for some services and collect certain fees under a fee schedule for certain tree permits. Fees are used to fund tree inspections, plan reviews, permit issuance, land use reviews, code enforcement, customer assistance, and other tree regulation-related functions. Portland Parks and Recreation charges fees to partially compensate for the cost of the services it provides. Parks and Rec does not charge fees for some services, for example, tree planting and tree pruning permits, in order to encourage these activities and reduce potential barriers to voluntary compliance with regulations. Other infrastructure and regulatory bureaus charge fees for their services in comparable processes, such as the Water Bureau, Bureau of Environmental Services, and Portland Bureau of Transportation. Portland Parks and Recreation has been proactive in informing and seeking input from customers regarding the need and rationale for the proposed fee changes. The Bureau has met with relevant stakeholder groups, including the Urban Forestry Commission and the Development Review Advisory Committee. We are proposing to increase certain permit fees to recover more of the costs of delivering those services. No new fees are proposed, certain permit fees remain unchanged, and select others are proposed for removal from the tree permit fee schedule because they are charged by other entities. You have in front of you a handout with gold and green on it, a spreadsheet that I'm going to refer to. It's titled Tree Permit Fees Research. And for example, one of the yellow highlighted fields is the violation appeal to code hearings officer fee. This is proposed for removal from the tree permit fee schedule because this is charged by the code hearings officer and doesn't really belong in this fee schedule. Those items indicated in white on this spreadsheet are unchanged. For example, the fee in lieu of tree planting and establishment, which remains at $300 per inch for the coming fiscal year. Those items in green are proposed for increase. Examples include the tree removal permit application, which is proposed to go from $25 per permit process to $35. You can see in this spreadsheet there is an actual cost column, and in that column for this item, tree removal permit application in non-development, that the permit process, if we charged full cost recovery, would be nearly $350, given the staff time invested in these. Not only would moving at one time to full cost recovery be a big increase, but we believe charging so much for a standalone permit process, such as in this case, would be a significant barrier to compliance. And so we plan to keep the rates for such permit processes low, even though they're not recovering our full expenditures for the service. Our funding gap at the proposed new fee levels is nearly $300,000. But we anticipate always keep, for that particular permit, the tree removal permit application. But we're going to absorb that and plan to do so in the future because of what I just described about that being an onerously high cost to charge if it were full cost recovery. In other cases, though, in the green fields, we're proposing modest increases to improve the cost recovery without jumping individual permit costs up significantly all at one time. And an example of that is the Public Works permit, which is in the development section of the spreadsheet, where we propose to collect a little more than half of the actual service cost. If we were to do full cost recovery on that permit fee, it would be significantly more at one time than it is currently. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about that, and would ask that Council approve the fiscal year 16-17 tree permit fee schedule as proposed on June 8th.
I know it's late, but just want to, just to help me out with a scenario here.
Yes.
So the restoration fee for tree removal for a city street tree,
Yes.
$300 an inch, right? So what's a scenario in which we would charge that fee?
That is when a violation has been committed that damages the tree. In most cases, it's going to be a pruning situation where a pruning permit wasn't obtained and incorrect pruning was done.
I see the damaged tree, but this is for removal, so.
You're looking at, yeah.
Tree removal.
Okay, in that case, then, the restoration fee, that's the fee that it would cost for us to get the tree back in, the value of that.
This is where a homeowner has illegally or improperly removed a street tree?
That's correct.
So if they legally and properly removed it because it was diseased or something, we wouldn't charge this fee, right?
They would have then the violation review fee, which is up above in that same section. That's
If they hadn't done,
But
if they had
hadn't done
asked
any
permission.
violation. So I have a 40-inch maple in front of my house.
Yes.
Thankfully, it's healthy. If it developed rot down the middle and it had to be removed, the city wouldn't charge me $12,000 for that. Right?
No. You would, if done correctly, you would get the tree removal permit
Yeah.
at $25 or maybe $35
Yeah.
next fiscal year, and that would be the only cost to you through the permit process.
These are only fees, these very high per inch charges are only in violation situations.
In that section under enforcement fees and penalties, correct.
Yeah, yeah, okay, just wanted to clarify that.
So Jen, this is 600 is listed on my calendar as an emergency. Can't take that up.
Correct.
That's correct.
We can take testimony and then we'll carry it over for a vote.
Okay, and my recollection is the Bureau of Environmental Services is Parks and Recreation. Is this part of it, or is it just other?
I think that's other than this. This is not related to fees.
And we're
Permit fees.
still holding off on bringing back the report to council on the annual report about the tree code and the proposal for another bigger project pending Bureau of Development Services and the Bureau of Planning Sustainability coming to some agreement on what should be in it.
And my hope is, because I know the other issues that we're in dialogue about are very important to parks and to BES, I'm hoping by next week we can work out all these issues so we can move forward.
I think we'll have them worked out today.
Even better.
Yeah.
All right, Jen, thank you very much.
Touche.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Anyone
thank
want to
you.
speak on this item? If not, then it's going to be carried over for a vote next week. 601.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Approve the designation of 6 trees as City of Portland heritage trees and remove the heritage tree designation from 2 trees.
So second reading, roll call, please.
Fish.
I'm sorry Dan's not with us today, because I seem to recall every year we've had this report, he has said this is his favorite report
Yeah.
and one of his favorite rituals. Very pleased to have a chance to vote on this, and thank you, Commissioner Fritz, and our tree stewards for bringing this forward. Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you to Jen Caro, our amazing urban forester, and the Urban Forestry Commission who worked hard on this. It was unfortunate that the PowerPoint wasn't working last week either, so that the public weren't able to see these fantastic 6 trees, and encourage folks who have a tree that they'd like to designate as a heritage tree to contact Parks so we can get that process going. Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Now, we have a few items left on our consent calendar. The following items are continued to next week because they're emergency ordinances and we cannot act on them today. That is item 575, 577, 578, 579, 580, and 583, and 584. Without objection, those items are all continued to next week. The remaining items that we actually have to act on are 574 and a couple others. So
About the
let's,
4/5, does that just get carried over, or
good question. I think you're right. Yes.
can we take testimony on that one? It's a simple
The 4/5.
grant agreement.
Yeah, let's deal with the rest of these first. So let's do 574.
574, reappoint Sam Rodriguez to the Building Code Board of Appeal for a term to expire May 21, 2019.
Anyone want to speak on this item? Motion to adopt the report.
So move.
Second.
Roll call.
Fritz.
Aye. Oh,
Fish, excuse me.
aye.
Fritz.
Thanks to Mr. Rodriguez for his service. Aye.
Hales.
Aye. 581.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County to transfer Multnomah County's tenancy interest in the 14th and 15th floors of the Portland Building to the city.
Roll call.
Fish.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hale.
Aye. 582.
Authorize the Director of Bureau of Environmental Services or designee and the city attorney to enter into a settlement and release agreement with John Widener and Julie Granfield, Upper Hillsdale Private RDII Reduction Project Number E10479.
Second reading, roll call.
Fish.
Aye.
Fritz.
Commissioner Fisher, I particularly appreciate that this was done collaboratively, and I appreciate the homeowners who have worked with BES on this. Aye.
Hales.
Aye. And then, where's our 4/5?
So 2.
602. Execute grant agreements with the Oregon Office of Emergency Management for pre-disaster mitigation grant in the amount of $526,256 for the City of Portland Residential Seismic Strengthening Project and Clean Energy Works, Inc. And because it's a 4/5 and there are not 4 on the council today, this will continue to next week.
We can have a hearing on it, though.
Yeah, take testimony if there's any, right?
I suppose you could ask somebody to come up, but I don't see anybody in the audience at this point.
So
It was
So even though
scheduled-
we've four-fifths
Well,
signed for it, it has to have four-fifths here to hear it.
Technically, you need 4 members present who signed off and were in front of you.
Oh, all right.
This will be carried over.
All right, we'll just continue it to next week then. All right. So ordered. And we're adjourned.
All right.
For your endurance.